highly recommended. If you haven't listened to Meg Myers' Make a Shadow, that is the musical beginning to today's live stream, and quite frankly, so I don't copyright strike myself, it's also a bit of a visual auditory hook because this is a very long video and I want to give you confirmation that you're in the right place on YouTube. We have got a long live stream today on shadow work. We are doing everything under the sun. You can check the timestamps down below because let's be real, this is a long video if you're watching this on replay. So just go to the question or the multiple questions that you want answered. I don't know what we're going to talk about just yet. We're going to be talking about things probably related to the neurotic personality of our time. This is Karen Horney, one of Freud's original disciples, but also a revolutionary feminine psychology thinker. And likewise, another book that I've been reading this week, Listening with the Third Ear by Theodore Reich. We're going to go into these as well, another one of Freud's disciples. They were both born in the 1880s, it's quite interesting. But nonetheless, this is a live stream. Check the timestamps down below, and we are having another deep dive conversation on shadow work. And today, my main intention is to be of service to whoever shows up. I just want to do a good job answering questions, be as specific and focused as I possibly can to try and bring things out there in my mind, bring out lessons from my heart, bring out memories from client work, and hopefully be useful to you in your shadow work journey as we go into the second month of 2025. I will be responding to the live stream and doing as much as I can for this wonderful community here. I see some people already coming through in the chat. Uma, welcome. Amy, welcome. Anyone else watching live, do let me know. Drop in the chat where you're watching from, and we will start taking some shadow work questions as this fills up to maybe a couple dozen people over the next few minutes, and then we'll dive straight in on the shadow work. Give you a moment to bring that up as I find myself on my second live stream phone down here. There I am, and there's my last video. Actually, no, there's not my last video. That's the victim complex video. It's also a good video. Uma says, I don't know much about shadow work, but I'm here to learn. Well, that's fantastic. Sometimes we don't know things, and we have to learn things eventually. I mean, I didn't come out of the womb knowing how to talk like this, or knowing how to stand up straight, and nobody did. So, everyone who's joining live, Mark, I see you joining live as I'm checking on the live stream chat on my phone. Mark, welcome. I see Lydia Lorraine, I made it, first time live stream viewer, happy to be here. Lydia, if you're here on time, make the most of this opportunity and be encouraged to ask me a question. We're going to be doing shadow work live in the library. So Lydia and everyone else who's watching live, Jamie, you included, Shadow Sister Healing, a topic close to your heart. I mean, we're talking about Shadow Sisters. Hi from Belgium, great timing, just perfectly synchronized to moment when I'm resting my feet and relaxing. I'm able to hear you. Patricia in the chat, just opened up your app now from South Africa, found your work fascinating, I love to hear it. Keep it coming, let me know for the first few minutes, you know how this goes. We've just opened up the live stream, we've got a long conversation ahead. Let's get a bit of community momentum in. Where are you joining me from in the world? What have you been doing today? And where is your shadow work in particular? I see a good question coming through as other people dive into the chat from Chris DE 2001. Hello Jordan from Ireland. Hello. Would you recommend reading The Voice of the Body or The Betrayal of the Body first? You know what? This is what I recommend. This is my Alexander Lowen stack, which I'm going to get. I'm just going to aggressively take out a few of them. There we go. No time for precision. This is a bunch of Alexander Lowen books. I'm just going to give you gold up front. If someone's gone to the timestamps and they see somatic psychology or bioenergetic psychology, the question that Chris just asked me is, should he read this book, The Betrayal of the Body, or this book, The Voice of the Body first? Well, what about if he should actually read Love, Sex, and Your Heart instead? Or what if he should actually read The Spirituality of the Body? I'm going to give you a little hint. All four of these books by Alexander Lowen are worth their weight in gold. This is your opportunity to screenshot. You will see them on Amazon or any secondhand bookseller. This is the OG somatic psychology. It doesn't take a genius to realize that when you've read one of these books, you should probably read all of the books, and Chris in particular. You can start with this book and then go to this book. You can go to this book and then go to that book. It doesn't really matter. You're realistically going to be reading both of them, and I suggest that everyone who's watching this live stream or watching on replay also reads these two books as well. I've got all 12 of Lowen's books. This is what, for most people, maybe a month or so of reading if you're reading every day. If you just read these 4 books, about a month and a half maybe for most people. But Chris, you're on the right track. I truly recommend reading both. If you have to get an answer, Unfortunately, I can't give you an answer. We actually had an interesting question over in the Shadowwork Library community last week. One of the members asked very specifically the same question. They said that they'd either been reading this one because I recommended it, but they actually found this one more useful. They've been reading The Betrayal of the Body to try and understand their somatic repressed emotions or various tensions and holding patterns, their anxieties, their depressions, their various neuroses. And they found that The Voice of the Body, which is a lecture collection, was actually more useful. And then someone else said, you know what, actually I found this one was more useful. And I said, no, this one and then that one. And the reality is that from the last 4.5 years of client work, I don't know which one's the most useful to you, which is why I tend to recommend both together. Genuinely. I personally got more out of The Voice of the Body in terms of how much material came through for me that was useful for me, but I've known clients that have gotten way more out of another book. I think the overall educational principle here is that I want everybody in this library live stream to professionalize their self-healing. If you're going to be autotherapeutic, if you're going to learn how to do this yourself, just embrace the fact that at the very minimum you're going to read all 4 of these books. And many more. Honestly. I see Tommy Vation in the chat saying, hi Jordan, I've read The Voice of the Body from your recommendation and really liked it. Now that you brought it up, might give it a reread. Fantastic. Good idea to give it a reread. I see Chantel saying, I've been wondering this as well. I also have Lowen's Bioenergetics and wasn't sure if I should start there or with one of the other two. Personally, I think Lowen's book, Bioenergetics, is less useful than these 2 books. I'd recommend you start with Voice of the Body or Betrayal of the Body and then go deeper with that. And Tommy says, love your content also. Thank you for coming here. Going back in the chat, I'm seeing Emmanuel here. Discovered you this week and super impressed with your work. Emmanuel, welcome. Prepare to install some new library shelves of your own because you will not be leaving this place if you choose to stay with me this year and not end up with at least several dozen books in your home. So get those shelves ready. Who else have we got in the chat? We've got Leah. Hello from Germany. Vrini, welcome back. I see you. I hope you've been reading and you've been enjoying your creativity as well. I see nobody in the chat. At times I don't feel like doing any inner work. It's so tiring. If I find peace in the moment, then why should I work more? I understand what you're saying. Great question here. Good question. Should we slow down our inner work? At times if you don't feel like doing your inner work, should you just find peace in the moment and slow down? Perhaps. I'm going to be controversial. This isn't just to the individual who asked the question. My philosophy of self-healing and self-actualization, or to be more specific, my philosophy of trauma healing is that if you've got incredibly difficult wounds from the past, you've got decades of bad energy inside of you, I would rather that you do an accelerated period of 3 to 5 years where you really fucking heal it, and then you get to enjoy the decades of peace ahead. I want to shift the framing from I'm tired in this moment, or I've got resistance in this moment, or maybe it's triggering to read one of these books in this moment. Yes, there's nuance, take a break. But as an overall psychology, I don't want you to just have the moment of peace or the pocket of relief because you're in a background body of trauma and stagnation and sickness or all kinds of psychosis, whatever it might be, neurosis, psychosis. I'm not a clinical psychologist. I don't care about the terms in particular. What I want is for you to have a wonderful, long life where there's more peace on a frequent basis. For me personally, my philosophy is do the 3 to 5 years of intense professionalized self-healing, read books for 90 minutes, 2 hours a day, every single day for 3 to 5 years, and then get to enjoy your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s without the tensions and the repressive, compulsive patterns. That's my overall philosophy. I hope it helps. To bring it back to your question, if you do need a break this week, take a break. I'm also not super extreme. You don't need to unnecessarily push if you actually need to take a break. For me personally, based on my literal story of healing about 12 years of suicidal depressive energy, which started at age 10, I grew up in a family home which I didn't enjoy being in. I grew up in a body which I didn't enjoy being in. I took a very focused, very intense look at all of my wounding. And by taking a look at that wounding and sitting in the tension and the pain for as long as I possibly could and working and working and working and working, I gathered more information, I stacked more therapeutic experiences, I took my journaling seriously, I really showed up and saw myself as the professional and the patient at the same time. I really did this autotherapeutic process very intensely. for a good number of years, and it seemed to work for me, and it's what I recommend to my clients and people who I end up working with one-to-one. They work with me for a 4-month period to try and condense the healing timeline from something that may take a year into something that takes 4 months, or at least their stage of the healing timeline. You know, they're from intermediate level, and I try and give them 4 months to then get them to advanced level. That's a general philosophical overview. If you do feel like you need a break from reading a difficult book, just put it down. That's fine. It's fine to take a break from a difficult book, but as an overall philosophy of self-healing, work along a 3 to 5 year timeline, which is the classically quoted timeline of what it takes to be about 80–85% healed of major family wounds, maybe major dissociative wounds, major addiction issues are usually healed in this time. 3 to 5 years. If you're just starting now, that means being prepared that this journey will take you until 2030. And that's okay, because you're going to live until 2040, 2050, 2060, 2070, and beyond. I don't know how old any particular individual is who's listening to me at this moment, but just, does that make sense? The philosophy of give it multiple years. Don't think in days and weeks. I know when the body feels tough or when there's something going on, it feels like you just need to live on a day-by-day basis. But if you can expand the perception, you get to really enjoy multiple decades of your future self. You get to prioritize the health and well-being of your own future self as you heal the past self and temporarily delay the gratification of the present self and stay in that healing tension and get all the benefits that come with it. That's my overall philosophical view, at the very least. It's a very controversial opinion for some people. I'm not here on YouTube to be excessively compassionate and patient because I don't believe that we all have that much time. I see in the chat, I can attest to that time frame. It took me 3.5 years of intense focused work and I experienced a massive paradigm shift. So I join in the encouragement. Call in 6 says, in a world of instant gratification, healing is difficult because deep healing isn't fast. Slowing down in this world is so hard. I agree. That's a fantastic comment. Genuinely fantastic comment. Person who asked the question a few minutes ago, nobody, said, thank you, Mr. Thornton. I think you have made a difference. I am rendered speechless. Keep reading the books. Every single day. For 3 to 5 years. Work with professionals based on the books that you resonate with most. For example, if you really resonate with The Betrayal of the Body, which is one of the books I'm recommending down in the description. If you haven't seen that link in the description, you're getting 6 books for free. It's in the study guide. This book and 5 more choice picks for 2025. You might find that you really like Alexander Lowen's way of working, and then you go and find a bioenergetic specialist in your area, and then you work with them for 6 to 12 months. The whole point of, not the whole point, that's too emphatic. Something that I really struggle to communicate, and often it's an assumption or a projection that's laid onto me, is I think you can do everything through just reading books alone. That's fucking ridiculous. It's obviously ridiculous. I am providing an inner work library as a resource pool for you to dip into, taste at least, well, realistically, 3 dozen different therapeutic modalities and psychological modalities, so you can say, I really like this way of working, or I really like Karen Horney's way of working, or I really like the way of working. I'm not going to pick out all the books, you get the point. You sample the book, you have a conversation with the author, and then you know which kind of specialist to work with in your local area for a focused period of time, and then that season completes and you go on to a different kind of specialist. You might start with something that's very basic like CBT, or some kind of very foundational mindfulness practice. You then go into basic somatic psychology with Peter Levine or Bessel van der Kolk, or you get into general trauma psychology with Gabor Mate. You then start specializing into things like Alexander Lowen, or maybe looking at Robert Scare's work in The Betrayal of the Body, not Betrayal of the Body, The Body Bears the Burden. Fantastic book. If I'm going quickly, just the nature of these videos, you can watch this on replay, just catch the book. That's what I was doing. I often get these questions of like, what was that book? I didn't get the book. Can you hold up the book again? If I'm doing a YouTube video, I've received 3 comments this week. 3 comments this week on the 20-minute, I read 693 psychology books saying basically the same thing. Can I have full book list? Or where's the full book list? Or like, where's the books? My friend, it's in the 20-minute video. Inside of the 20-minute video, I hold up the book and you get the opportunity to just screenshot. Boom. And then go back onto your folder and then add it to your favorite secondhand bookseller. I did that for years myself. When I was listening to podcasts, I don't listen to too many podcasts these days, but about 7, 8 years ago, I was on a lot of healing podcasts. I used to go for walks all the time. I was working on farms around Europe. I'd always have my earphones in, and if ever a book was mentioned, I'd pause it, I'd go into my notes, and then I'd put it down, and that's where I started the whole process of getting deeper into my inner work. But as an overall psychological framework, take one of the books, use it as a trampoline for you to go further into your work. I hope that helps. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so just understand that if you're watching my videos where I hold up lots of books and then you say, where's the book list? You know what, I'm going to give you a behind the scenes moment. This is behind the scenes. I really like people showing up in live. I see people coming in the chat. I'm going to come back in on the questions. If you do have a question for me, new rules that we're applying in the library, put question in all capitals and then put a colon or a dash and then your question. It'll allow me to then really be able to see where questions are on my screen rather than losing things. If people are just chatting backwards and forwards, it's sometimes difficult for me to pinpoint, choose a question. If I see the word question, all capitals, I can then be able to know what people are talking about, and it's a quicker, smoother process for everyone. But just as an aside, while the questions come in, I will wrap up a certain point about why you have never really seen the book list in the description. Why, as a YouTuber, do I not put the book list in the description or in the comments section? There's several reasons. Reason number one, how many times have you gone to a YouTube video where there's a book list, you screenshot the entire book list, and then you never look at the screenshot again? How many times have you said, I'm going to read those books, and then you don't because there's way too many presented at once? You just amass the entire book list, but you don't take action, or you buy one or two of the books and then they stay on your shelf. What I think is the most useful in terms of the psychology of self-healing is that somebody will pay attention to the right book at the right time. When I'm doing a video that has 5 or 15 books in it, and I hold them up in rapid succession, like I did at the very start of this live stream, and I'm saying, here's these 3 books. Here's all 4 of them. 10 people inside of this live stream will have read both of these, and they'll never have seen these ones before. And they're going to pay attention to these. Someone else is here for the first time, they're going to see this one. They like the word betrayal, because that sounds kind of emotionally charged. Someone else, they're in a bit of a love, sex, and your heart kind of mood, because last week we were talking about the sexual shadow. I hold up books so that you can watch the video, and you'll be able to know which one's the right one for you. And then you screenshot it or you make note of it, and over the years of you being exposed to my material on YouTube, because let's face it, if you've been here for a few years, I'm just going to keep appearing on your home feed. If you search for something related to the mother complex or the father complex or a certain concept within self-healing or a transpersonal psychology concept, eventually, because I keep doing this work every single week, you're going to keep coming across my work. And you're like, oh, it's Jordan again. Fine, I'll see what Jordan has to say on this topic. And it's like, oh, there's 10 more books on the topic. And what's funny for me on my side is that you might have searched, say, for example, a video on Ken Wilber 2 years ago, and I recommended 2 Ken Wilber books. And then you've been on this entire reading journey all over the world of transpersonal psychology. This is my Ken Wilber shelf up here, mainly integral thinkers. That goes into more Jungian. This is Alice Bailey's freshly illuminated stack over there. You can't receive all of this at once. You maybe got 2 books, you went on a 2-year learning arc, and then you search Ken Wilber integral theory, or transpersonal psychology, or transpersonal psychotherapy, or psychosynthesis, or Roberto Assagioli, or any particular person, and because I optimize for search results, I then give you a spread of books based on your consciousness at that day in 2027, and I'm making videos 2 years ago for you in 2 years' time. That's my whole strategy with YouTube. I'm making an inner work library, I'm making an archive, I'm putting it all out there in a timeless way, so that then, when the time is right for you, you'll come back in on a video that I've already made, and you'll be able to receive the book. That's why I do it, which is why I don't put book lists in the description, because I think a more active process of understanding your journey over multiple years as a member of this community or someone who's interested in my work, hopefully that helps. I see Roots and Waves saying, finding your channel has been life-changing for me. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you. I see some good messages coming through. Hopefully that explains things of my overall psychology of why I don't put book lists in the description. It's a much deeper process. I genuinely am prepared to spend another 5 to 10 years building out on YouTube every single week. It's why I also have a video series in terms of the main videos. It's out of 500 videos. It's quite interesting when I started that process of like episode 1, episode 3 out of 500. It's a bit of a bold move to say I'm going to do 500 episodes, but we're approaching the halfway mark, and I will do 500 episodes because I've read over 700 books, and at least, the majority of these books deserve at least one video each. About 150 of them have been banished into the garage. Every now and again I do a purge where I pull out the unworthy books, those which are not meant for students or clients or myself. They are purged into the garage. But the ones that remain, they're worth a video of their own. That's my idea anyway, so why not do 500 videos? Why not just see where things go? And these live streams are a fun addition in the last 4 months or so. So let's see what's in the chat, shall we? Remember, if you want to ask a question, put question in all capitals and then your question so I know what to look at. I see Relax saying, so you think it's important to put into practice, not just read. I think that's why I was a bit skeptical, Jordan, because you tell us to read a lot, but the thing is I read and forget and don't apply. So we need to apply and integrate. Yes, of course. If you are just reading as if it were a school exam, it's not the right way to study as an adult when you're doing trauma healing or self-integration work. Glad that that's clarified. Elena says, I understand now why you love trauma in the soul so much. It's a profound and comprehensive summary of the only mission that truly matters, the path to freedom. What would be a companion book to this one? If you enjoyed Trauma and the Soul, you've got 2 choices. Aline? I think it's Aline. If I'm mispronouncing your name, please correct me. A companion book to Trauma and the Soul by Donald Kalshed. You have got 2 branches to go down. You can either go deeper into the spiritual psychology, or you can go more into the somatic psychology. There's 2 branches roughly reaching up and roots reaching down. If you're interested in the more spiritually dissociative side of things, I go for a book like this one. Let me go over to my shelf over here. You'll like this. Go over to this big shelf over here. That's my transpersonal psychology shelf right there. In the middle, top is Christianity and mysticism, then we've got transpersonal psychology, and then sort of shadow work, and then it's therapy books for therapists, and then some miscellaneous books down the bottom. Everything's nicely organized in here, because it has to be. But this is a book that I'm going to get for you. This one, this is a good one. Trials of the Visionary Mind by John Weir Perry. This is about the somewhat psychotic effects of having a spiritual breakthrough or spiritual awakening and the dissociative, unfortunate symptoms that come with this. So if you're someone who's creative and empathic and sensitive and you're interested in trauma and the soul, you'll enjoy this as your spiritual read of choice. Trials of the Visionary Mind. I believe that this book, let's do the game. When was this published? 1986, I believe. John Weir Perry is more modern. He's 1999. 1999 on this one, but still, 26-year-old book. Recommend this one. And if you want to do a somatic psychology book, I'd actually go with something like Betrayal of the Body, which is moving towards the bioenergetic side of things. So hopefully that helps. We'll now go back into the chat. If I didn't get to your message just yet, then welcome to the library live stream. We're going to go for as long as we can and see what we can do. Cynthia says, I want to become a faster reader to accelerate the expansion of my consciousness. It's a good aim, but I struggle with finding balance with time management in all my roles as a wife, mother, RN, and my inner work. Is RN registered nurse? If it is registered nurse, then I can imagine. I don't know what RN is in particular. Please let me know in the chat. But still, wife, mother, and inner work to try and find time to balance, be a faster reader. That is a particular challenge in itself. I've worked with people who have very demanding jobs in terms of client work. They have 60-hour work weeks in very stressful positions. People who are doctors, for example. Yes, registered nurse. Okay, I'll make it particular. So I've worked with a few doctors working in different parts of the world, and as you know, there's very long hours. There's often very short intervals for rest. Sometimes you can be on call and on demand throughout the entire work week. Maybe you have your 24, 48-hour off windows, but then you're doing family things. What I have seen work in my client work with people who are in the medical profession and have very intense work weeks is that they need to have a non-negotiable reading chunk at least 1 day per week on the weekends. I know you're asking about reading speed, but I'm going to create the foundation first. I see really good success in having a 3 to 5 hour reading chunk on a Saturday or a Sunday, and that being a dedicated sacred time where you're going to study, and then trying to get these 30 to 60-minute windows in wherever possible. Say, for example, if you've got family responsibilities, to take half an hour while something's happening. Say, for example, you're cooking something, there's some rice cooking, or there's something in the oven, to take a half an hour moment when you can. Focus on the time spent, not the speed of the reading. What often tends to happen with people who get anxious about reading too slow, especially if they've got a demanding work life, is that they place all of their inner expectations of getting the most out of the book or going faster with the healing journey on how many words and how many pages they can do per minute. I don't recommend that. I know logically it makes sense. If I can read more pages per minute or more pages per hour, then I should move through the material quicker. Yes, that's true, but what tends to be more important is actually having dedicated reading hours per week. If you can find a way to have half an hour per day, no matter what, and you always hit that half an hour per day, and then a 3 to 5 hour window on one day on the weekend, a proper study day, some time for yourself, it's restorative, and you maintain that for 3 to 6 months, that will naturally increase your reading speed. There's no shortcut to how to go quicker at reading other than spending more time reading every single day. There's all kinds of speed reading techniques out there. I've never paid attention to any of them. I've never purposefully tried to increase my reading speed. I just have always advised people to spend more time reading. And if you do spend more time reading, you'll naturally increase your reading speed and also increase your focus and your capacity to then get the most out of a book, which is especially important if you've got multiple demands on your life, because you're doing something which is pretty demanding in terms of your work life and your family life. I see people saying in the chat, I read once to gain familiarity with the text, and then my future reads will dive into the content and notes. Chew your food, exactly. Chew your food. I see Ritesh saying, I have my psychiatry residency training interview in 30 minutes. It's my dream. Well, good luck. I won't be able to watch this live, but we'll get back. Any advice for me to hold on during my training? So you have your psychiatry residency training interview in 30 minutes. Ritesh, if you're already, I suppose you've already got your undergraduate or maybe master's, or if you're going for residency, I don't know the exact country that you're in, if you've gone through a fellowship structure already, if you've already spent years working on wards, or I don't know the exact situation depending on the country. But if you're looking for something to hold on to, my best advice as someone who's tangentially working within mental health on the coaching side of things is to just settle your energy into your center, into your heart, and let the love of the work guide you through that interview. If you're getting into psychiatry because you want to help people, and that is your chosen lane of helping people, you love that particular style, connect with the heart of the work, connect with the reason that you're here to do this, and let that energy emanate from you in that interview. Let the training really be quite a self-rewarding process, because if you are going to commit to this career path for decades, probably should be rewarding. Otherwise, you may have picked the wrong profession, I'm afraid. So if the love's not there right now, I'm sorry, that's a warning moment, but if the love is there, go deeper into the love of helping people, the love of being useful. That's likewise what I'm trying to tap into today and go into in great questional detail. Question, let's go back up to the questions that are pre-submitted with the word question. Okay. Remember, if you want to submit a question or capitals, colon, dash, and then I will be able to see about the questions. Question, are you working on a book? Yes, it will be out in anywhere between 1.5 years to 3 years. Question, I'm a widowed single mom with a homeschooler, age 7. I often feel triggered by my child, and I'm confident many or all parents feel this. What would you recommend for parents to heal their inner child while working with their child 24/7? Okay, this is a fantastic question. I'm going to take a sip of this. What would I recommend to parents who are triggered by their child while also trying to heal their own inner child? This is a fantastic question. I feel like a lot of us can get a lot out of this, Amy. Thank you for asking, and thank you for being patient as well. There's a few things I could say. Let me structure a few years of working with parents into something that can hopefully be articulated in about 10 minutes of practical advice. So there's two lanes here that we need to explore. You've got the lane of healing your own inner child, which is primarily the interior lane, and you've got the lane of parenting your outer child, your literal child that you have created and birthed into the world. As a mother, you've literally created them. That's your outer lane, but still fundamentally, the outer lane goes all the way back to you in terms of the umbilical cord at a literal level, but also energetically, they go all the way back in, and your inner child likewise traces you back to your ancestry and the ways that you were parented and raised. There's two distinct lanes, but of course they overlap. That's a basic given. Maybe I'm overcomplicating it, but the reason I'm laying it out in this framework is that to see your inner child healing and your outer child parenting as two sides of the same continuum is the foundational basis for having a harmonious relationship with your own younger wounded self, and also having more compassion and more patience for the triggering aspects of your own 7-year-old child. It would be a lie, we're having a shadow work conversation here, it would be a lie for any parent to say that they never get triggered by their child, or that they never dislike their child from time to time. In fact, I've worked with clients, several clients, where I'll keep their stories confidential, but several parents I've worked with have been actively resentful of their children because they either had their child too soon, with the wrong person, or under the wrong conditions, and they have kept that secret inside of them for years. They wouldn't tell anyone. They wouldn't dare tell their children. They'd lie to their partner. But they tell me in a private session because I'm trying to help them release that resentment so they can be present with their children. But unfortunately, you don't release the resentment by just vocalizing it out and then pretending it's all gone away. If you're consistently getting triggered by, say, for example, the demanding nature of your child, if they're super needy or super avoidant, or they're really difficult, or they're a picky eater, or they're difficult in socializing with other children in one way or another, and you find that that triggers your own inner child wounds, you have got a golden shadow work opportunity to heal both in tandem. Almost like the shadow work wave rises up, and the outer ships of your children and the inner ships all come up on that tide. Imagine an ocean. Everything gets raised up, and that wave is consciousness. The consciousness goes up, everything comes up with it. Fundamentally, practically speaking, you have to be honest about the things that you dislike in your own child. Your outer child and your inner child. If you've got multiple children, everyone else who's listening, if you've got multiple children, I am going to invite you to do something which maybe you've never done before. It's a very triggering exercise, but it's an honest exercise. I want you to take a piece of paper, write down the name of your child, and write things I don't like about them. I know it's taboo. I know you love them deeply. You'd do anything for them at the same time. But be honest with that part of your psyche. Things I don't like about them. Again, could be social issues, could be behavioral issues, could be ways that they challenge you or ways that they're not connected with you. Put those lists down. Give it 20 minutes. 20 minutes of stewing in the energy of what you don't like about your child, or even the effect that they have on you. They take all of my time, they take my energy, they're super demanding. You have to, as I see in the chat, you have to accept it. You have to accept that you dislike these things. That's stage one. Again, privately. You can be bold and you can get a candle and you can burn the page right at the end. No one needs to see this, but you need to be honest with yourself, because the energy is on a compulsive loop and it's getting in the way of you loving your child fully. Stage 2 in this process of how to go from your inner child and outer child both causing you issues, how to be, sort of a really present parent and getting over the resentments that you have towards your own children, is to do a second list over here. Things I dislike about my own inner child. Things I dislike about how I was as a child. Things I dislike about my childhood in general. Write down the list. See what comes up. And if you pay attention, connect the lines. I dislike the fact that my child is needy and demanding of my time. I also dislike the fact that my inner child is avoidant and not showing up. That doesn't seem connected. Okay, we'll come back to that one. I dislike the fact that my child is needy and demanding of my time. I dislike the fact that I was needy and always demanding of my mother's time. Obvious connection, but that's That's the obvious level. The first example of the avoidant inner child is actually the inversion of the outer situation that you're facing. And this is a general principle that I want you to look at. Stage 3, list 1, things you dislike about your child. Stage 2, things you dislike about your own inner child. The third stage is the stage of weaving it together. Look for like matches. For example, literally, I don't know, that example there of neediness. I was needy, they're needy. But look for the inversions as well. If you were a particularly avoidant child, surprise, surprise, you've got a particularly needy outer child. If you were a particularly sporty child and you've got a completely inactive child, surprise, surprise, there's an inversion. Look for the commonalities and look for the inversions, and then it's on you as a parent to heal the outer relationship by healing the inner relationship and developing more compassion and more love. And this is the point where you let the love flow through, to love them in their behavioral issues, to love yourself in your own behavioral issues, right? So hopefully this helps. Overall framework of how to do some pretty significant shadow work as a parent with children that you dislike for one reason or another. It doesn't mean that you're a bad parent. It doesn't mean that they're a bad child. It's you being honest about the fact that there are certain things in your own children that you find unpalatable or disruptive, and if you can be honest about it and truly then accept the fact that you're honest about your own acceptance of the things that you dislike, you can then actually pour love in a genuinely minimally conditional kind of way. Don't aim for unconditional love. Don't aim for unconditional acceptance. Try and get that unconditional compassion, but you have to understand what the conditions are first. So I hope that helps. Let me know in the chat if that was coming through. I see Colin6 saying this is powerful. I see Jamie saying it's such a fantastic exercise, and what an incredible expansive exercise. This is amazing. Cool. I love this as well, and the shame must be immense. Cool. Fantastic. I see other people homeschooling a 6-year-old. Thank you, Amy, for the question. Great. Great, great, great. Cool. Question. Scrolling back now up in the chat. You guys enjoying the library live stream? Let's see what we've got for the next question. Question from Mandy. What are your thoughts on semen retention practices for a heterosexual couple in a healthy long-term monogamous relationship? Hypernormal 2D pixelated sex stimuli is not present in a relationship. So Mandy's asking me a question, very different topic all of a sudden. What do I think about retention practices? So I suppose semen retention or not foregoing orgasms inside of a conventional monogamous heterosexual relationship. I think it's a great idea, quite frankly. See what happens if you remove the ejaculation and the orgasm in terms of your sexual connection. We were speaking about this multiple times over last week. At the very least, run an experiment. See what happens. For example, I'll speak to the men. See what happens if you're in a relationship with your girlfriend or your wife, and for the next 3 months of sexual interactions, you engage with each other without chasing the orgasm, without chasing the ejaculation. See what happens. There's plenty of books about this. Last week I was talking about this in great detail, so I'm not going to linger on it in too much detail here. You can go back and watch the 3.5 hours or so that I did on the sexual shadow. I've got it timestamped. You can see the links in the description. Go over there and watch those videos. In terms of a short answer about a couple who are doing this together, what you'll tend to find, and what I've found in the clients who have been interested in this pathway of releasing the orgasms and not chasing the orgasms, is that their relationship cycle goes from ups and downs and like a peak crescendo and then a crash down experience to more of a high level wave experience. There's more flirtation, there's more sensual touch throughout the day. It's not the case that, for example, the very classic pattern with most men, and I've been there before in the past, is that you see something visually or sexually attractive. In this case, you see your girlfriend, you see your wife, and like, ooh, I want to be close to them. And you go closer to them. You get your hands involved, you get your lips involved, you get other parts of you involved. If you really pause to look behind the scenes, just see if there's an underlying desire just to ejaculate. I want to ejaculate because it's been 2 days, or it's been 3 days, or it's been 4 days. And consider what it might be like to approach your girlfriend or your wife, not having that compulsion, but it being a loving, truly appreciative, magnetic compulsion nonetheless. You'll still be drawn towards them. You'll still want to kiss them and cuddle them and touch them and get into the bedroom together, but you won't be led by a base desire to basically get off or to let off some tension. It won't be, I'm doing this unconsciously for tension relief. You'll be doing it consciously for the expansion of love and the deepening of the relationship. You can still do all kinds of things that you want to do in the bedroom together. That's your choice. You're both adults. You can do it however you want. But if you see what happens if you do 3 to 6 months of not chasing the orgasms in your relationships, you might get an opportunity to peek into the sexual unconscious and see what's there. People have all kinds of questions about this. People have all kinds of relationships with it. I recommended a book called Cupid's Poisoned Arrow by Mania Robinson last week. Go watch the Sexual Shadow live streams, and we spoke about this in more detail. You can go back to the old ways if you want to go back to the old ways. One thing that I want you to pay attention to if you're starting to get a bit of tension and you're wringing your hands about the idea of not ejaculating or not orgasming in sex for a few months. Consider why that might be. Why? Why are you nervous about giving up a peak experience for 15 to 20 seconds a couple times per week? Just see. And consider the other 23 hours and 59 minutes of the week. Consider what you could do with that energy. I hope that helps. I'm going to come back in and take a question. I'm firstly going to hydrate myself, actually. Got some lovely sparkling water. Some great questions in the chat. I'm going to try and get round to everybody if you've been patient. I appreciate the patience. Trying to give people 5 to 10 minute responses. Checking the chat now to see what the questions were. I see Alia K. Tiedemann. Question, could you kindly recommend any material for a lady deep diving into the topic of leadership? Books for feminine leaders. Books for feminine leaders. It depends what kind of leader you want to be. If you're in more of the entrepreneurial, expansive era where you're happy to do more structured, more rigid, more disciplined work, then it's not really the case that gender matters too much. Just go for overall leadership works. If you're specifically asking, like the lady part, like I want more feminine leadership-oriented books, some of the books that I found useful are... Is there a top-tier book? I don't know if I've read a great book on this. There's been other female coaches and teachers that I've seen online have spoken about feminine business principles. I don't know if there's a good book. I don't know. I wish I could answer your question. I've yet to find it. One book that I was looking at that happens to be down here, I think this is the closest I've got. This was a book that came out a few years ago. Good business book by a business coach to my awareness is the book Followed by Amanda Bucci. She's a young woman, does her business, does her entrepreneurship. This book is written towards women who are doing social media marketing, social media content strategies and building their brand online, but it didn't really land for me personally. I kept it here because I thought it might be useful for perhaps this situation. I don't know. I find that the general issue with feminine-oriented business books and leadership books is that sometimes it can lean a bit too delusionally into law of attraction, law of manifestation work, and it gets a bit too spiritual and a bit too ungrounded. I also think that sometimes we could actually do with a bit more hard charging, a bit more discipline and devotion. I think the major frame, actually, you know what, I've stumbled into it there. My major advice is basically if you read any male business book and you see the word discipline, just substitute it for the word devotion. It's a lot more feminine. It's also more receptive and it's also a bit softer, but it's still got that strength and ferocity. To be devoted. Like to be devoted to your children, to be devoted to a spiritual cause, to be devoted to your garden or devoted to your home. Very classic feminine stereotypical principles. But if you're looking to build a business for the long term, Ali, I can see you in the chat. Thank you, Jordan. I appreciate your authentic answer. I mean, you and me both had the similar question, right? Because we're trying to find books that would be useful. One of the good psychological recommendations I could have for you in terms of getting over some of the inner psychological challenges is to read a book like The Shadow King by Sidra Stone. The Shadow King by Sidra Stone, which will reveal some of the aspects of the more negatively tilted masculine images from, juvenile male consciousness, the puerarchy, not the patriarchy, which is the patriarchy, but the puerarchy, which is the rule of boys. Fantastic distinction. If you've never heard of this, patriarchy, the rule of the patriarch, this is a confused thinking. Of course, a lot of the masculine leadership structures in the world aren't actually true patriarchs because they're not healthy, they're not mature. It is puerarchy, the rule of boys, wounded little boys. Again, I'm not challenging all men. Don't put words in my mouth, don't layer projections on. I love working with men, I love being a somewhat strong and capable masculine man myself, but at the same time there's a distinction between boy psychology and man psychology, and women can often take boy psychology and layer it over as business advice, forgetting that true man psychology is very different to a lot of the rah-rah self-help business and entrepreneurship stuff that's out there. Just a general principle. I hope that helps. Come back in on the chat. Take the next question. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to be able to do questions where, we don't necessarily get the answer. I see Alia saying, I have a black belt in judo. I know about discipline and pain indeed, but because of my appearance, I attract for the wrong reasons workplaces with staff and bosses. Okay, well, you got to balance the journey. I know the one. I've worked with pretty good number of successful, highly intelligent women, and they face very particular challenges of their own, especially in dating and relationships with men in the corporate world as well. It's just very challenging. Gets harder and harder the better you get, very unfortunately. Going back and looking at the questions in the chat, remember if you want to ask me a question, put the word question, and then colon, and then the question. All capitals question. I'll then be able to scroll through quickly and see what people are saying, because this is a one-man library show. So I'm just going to scroll through. Question from Uma. I went through a breakup 13 years ago and I'm experiencing delayed grief. I have bodily symptoms like ache on the left side of my chest. Should I consult a trauma-informed therapist? Probably yes. Yes, I think you should. I appreciate you asking me as a man in a library on a live stream, but if you've got ache on the left side of your chest, that could be something far more significant, and I'd go to someone who's a specialist. Not all the answers can be found through reading books, so please do what you need to do to look after yourself. Another question coming through from Relax. How can I break the cycle of obsessively analyzing an unrequited connection when introspection and analysis feel like a hobby I enjoy? So you're asking me, how can you stop obsessing over somebody who doesn't want you back because you enjoy introspection and analysis, right? That's what you're asking. How can you stop obsessing over someone who doesn't want you because you like thinking about these things? The brutal answer is just stop fucking wasting your time, because your talents can be used elsewhere. If you enjoy introspection and analysis, you can read other books, you can study other things, you can develop other hobbies, you can shift that projective narrative towards something that's more useful. If you've got the raw capacity, I'll give you a metaphor. If you're a lion who was born to run, and you were dropped into the savannah, and you were running every day, but then suddenly the savannah's taken away from you, don't dream about the savannah of yesteryear. Go and find a new plain to run through. Go and find a new field. Go and find somewhere that gives you the ability to flex those strong muscles, right? That's a lion needing to run, needing to roam, needing to hunt. If your brain's hunting and your brain wants to roam, give yourself something to focus on. If you like analysis and introspection, let yourself roam. Learn, study, create. Stop wasting your time. I see in the chat multiple laughing emojis from the person who asked the question. Thanks, lol. Yeah, it feels like the most intriguing thing I can do. Nothing is quite the same as that because of the emotional and intellectual aspect. Nothing is quite the same just yet. For any man or woman who's hung up on an ex or someone who doesn't love them back in the same way that they loved them, of course look into projection, look into limerence, look into all the romantic fantasy things that we were discussing in quite great detail last week. Understand primarily it's a waste of your fucking time. If you've got the intellectual capacity to want to analyze situations, give yourself another lane of expression, and thirdly, also just move on with your life in a way that you realize, fundamentally, you are robbing yourself of the possibility to get into a better relationship with someone who's a more compatible match for you with every month that you're spending energetically hung up on someone who's not meant for you. It's painful. It's devastating, especially if they're particularly amazing in one way or another. But you just have to move on. I gave the advice in a previous live stream of saying the prayer of intention, saying the loving prayer. If you're hung up on the ex, I love you. Hung up on the person you never even started dating, I love you. I want you. I wish we could be together. I'll say this fully with full heart. I wish we could be together. I wish it were you and me against the world. And just proclaim it out. But let it be 1 minute. Let it be 1 minute of fully felt emotion rather than 10 hours in your mind where you lay there in bed and you're thinking about them. Waste of time, waste of energy. You're desecrating your own potential. You can do so much more with your life. So that's my advice. And hopefully a loving sense. I'm not shaming you, shaming anyone in particular. Just a genuine, come on. You don't even need to demonize them. I'm not suggesting that. You don't need to, you can depedestalize them a little bit. I'm not saying you demonize them and throw them into the ashes. You honor the fact that you want them. You say it fully. I feel this. I feel feelings. And eventually, it's out. You can move on with your day, right? Really exaggerating it. I feel love. Move on with the rest of your day. I hope that helps. I've done variants of that myself in breakups, in losing friendships. It works. It genuinely works. Looking now for another question from the chat. I see call in 6 saying, we are so lucky to be in a world where we are all connecting here like this. It's bonkers. I agree. I see Thea saying, sir, you have some extremely insightful answers. You cut right through all the BS. You hit the right stuff the right way. Great format, great teacher, man. I got a split. Check you later. Thank you for being here. Relax says, are you sure it's a waste of time though? I'm learning through it using ChatGPT to analyze it. Please stop fucking using ChatGPT to analyze your relationships. Please fucking stop it. I apologize for the sudden aggression. It's not you in particular. Something's happening right now. It's been getting worse and worse for the last 6 months. This is a good topic. I'm sorry, not going on the questions. I am so unbelievably concerned about what's happening to our ability to be able to make our own decisions and be able to feel our own feelings when we're outsourcing our feeling and our decision making to an AI algorithm that's programmed on other people's collective feelings. I understand it's been helpful. I understand at that immediate stage of I've got a problem, put it into ChatGPT, you get it reflected back to you. I understand. But information that's presented to you from the outside is not the same as information gathered from the inside. I will frame it this way. I'll frame it metaphysically. I'll frame it metaphorically. What is more beautiful and artistically true as an inner experience? To be read a poem that someone else wrote, or to spend the hours writing the poem yourself and then speaking it out loud for the first time? In matters of the heart, this is the distinction. What we're doing with ChatGPT, by my bias, by my intensity, by my ungrounded, antiquated 1880s mindset. I understand people use ChatGPT for benefit. I see in the chat, but Jordan, I'm not asking for an answer. I use ChatGPT to analyze. It challenges me. I think for myself, and GPT helps me see things from a different perspective. It's all on how you use it now. I see someone else saying, yes, but the human condition is universal. Even ChatGPT gets that, surely. I see Call-in 6 saying, work with all parts of yourself, not a computer. Work with another human. Call-in 6 is getting close to what I feel. I see and feel the intensity. Yeah, see, Alex says, let me ask ChatGPT what I think about this. That's exactly it, Alex. Let me ask ChatGPT what I think about this, which is the equivalent psychologically of a child's consciousness. I'm going to say it. A child's consciousness saying, what does mommy think? What does daddy think? You want a magical answer. The problem with the ChatGPT issue, I'm going to get this book out. I'm glad we're talking about this. This is a great situation to be in. The problem with AI and what's happening with unskillful use of AI, if you take something like the King, Warrior, Magician, Lover paradigm, and you take the Magician in particular, I think around page 23 in this, we have the pyramids. What you're doing with this is it, the detached manipulator and the denying innocent one. I'm going to do a quick breakdown of Magician archetype, just so you can understand what's happening with the unskillful use of AI. So here we have the Magician archetype broken down. I'm going to move the candle out the way so I don't burn the back of the book. Here we have, it might be flipped around on the camera, but we have the pyramids between the Magician in fullness and the Magician in weakness. Magician in fullness in the middle. I use a paradigm of +5, -5. I'm going to teach a basic principle. I'm not going to go into full detail. Read the book for yourself. Magician in fullness. Overcharged, detached manipulator. Undercharged, the denying innocent one. In boys' psychology, this applies to women as well, just bear with me. We have the know-it-all trickster and the dummy. The dummy. To overly rely on ChatGPT to sort out your inner emotional landscape is to disempower your own emotional intelligence and disempower your own intuitive intelligence to be able to make sense of your own feelings and what's actually going on in your body. There is no ChatGPT situation that's going to be able to take that inner feeling and give you information from the outside and truly give you an understanding of what that's like to be felt. It's not that you are a dummy. This is archetypal as well. It's like the overall framework of the Magician is that if you're overcharged, you become manipulative with the use of technology. If you're undercharged, you let technology take control of you. What's happening with AI and ChatGPT is that we're pendulum swinging in dramatic directions, one to the other. For example, I've seen many people in the last 6 months basically say, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover by Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette. They'll go to ChatGPT and say, give me a book summary for King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. Or they'll take a photo of the page, give me a summary of this, give me a summary of that, and they think they're being very smart, and they are being very smart. I understand that you're working through the material in a faster way than I could work through by just reading the book, and there's all kinds of clever things that you can do with ChatGPT to be able to bring out the information, but you're using it in a way that's a disconnected sorcerer's energy, like the sorcerer is using the scrying ball, and if you use this for information, it's probably fine. If you use it for like website coding or to figure out a technical issue or really mundane things like comparing products on the internet, comparing this vacuum to this vacuum, fine. I'm not against that. But when you start using that tool, an inorganic tool for an organic process, an organic experience, you are in very tricky territory. And the books that I recommend on this channel are somewhere in between. Very much somewhere in between. It's objective information, book knowledge, but it relates to your subjective experience of yourself, your own heart, your own emotions, your own trauma, your own existential worries. And I feel collectively what's happening now for the next 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ahead. What are we becoming as a collective if we're outsourcing our own emotions to an algorithm and a robot who tells us what we feel? There's benefits and drawbacks. I have my strong bias. All I can do, as I said in the conversation with a friend earlier this week, who's likewise influential in the teaching space, someone who's got a very large reach, we had a conversation behind the scenes. I'm not going to mention who it is. I don't like name dropping and stuff like this, but we had a very interesting conversation about, well, what do we do with millions of people watching us? And I said, on this point, I like to imagine, and I feel very strongly, that my role is to be one of the last people, because I'm in the millennial generation, one of the last people to do it the old school way of reading a book, rereading a book, manually struggling with the material, and staying in touch with the heart of the work, rather than an optimized way of drawing out as much information as possible and then presenting it to you in an inorganic and flattened way. I see my role as being something like an old school creator. I know there's resistance. to this idea. I know there's different opinions and perspectives. I encourage people to make their own choices. I just want to give you a glimpse of what's happening with the uncalibrated, unconscious, magician archetypal energy which comes alive in the shadow compulsions and fixations of using ChatGPT to figure out your own inner landscape. It's different. And if you work with an actual therapist or an actual coach, you build a real human relationship, and that's communicating through eye contact and heart and also energetic patterns. I see Relax coming in. ChatGPT knows my patterns. When I tell it a story, it gives me insights, it associates my patterns with certain behaviors. Basically, it's been truly great to get to know myself. Do you see how it could work that way? I do see how it could work that way. I also don't fucking care. In the most loving sense, I don't fucking care, because the overall trajectory for millions of people doing this work, if we all just swing over the next, it's happened, it's already happened. I've seen it happen in real time. I've seen it happen. I'm not for it. I remember about a year and a half ago when some of my clients started asking me, what do you think about ChatGPT? And I felt a twisting feeling in my guts. I'm not against tech. I've built my business through tech. But I felt that twisting immediately because you're outsourcing your own human essence to a robot. It's still built by humans, and it's built by collective patterns in humanity. You're stripping yourself of the possibility of finding your truly unique individual experience of your own emotional landscape. What happens when you read a book is that you literally read between the lines. Got a quote at the top. You know what, I'm going to calm myself down. This is a message I wrote to myself about 5 or 6 years ago when I first read this book. Right there at the top in the margin. It looks upon the world with a firm but kindly eye. We're talking about the king archetype in his own worth. And I wrote on the side, you are already doing this. Message from myself in the past, or maybe pure arrogance and grandiosity. I care about the human experience. Let's read the quote from the book about the king archetype and what the king does in the world. The king looks upon the world with a firm but kindly eye, reading from King Warrior Magician Lover. He sees others in all their weakness and in all their talent and worth. He honors them and promotes them. He guides them and nurtures them toward their own fullness of being. He is not envious because he is secure. As the king, he is its own worth. He rewards and encourages creativity in us and in others. It's not about me, I'm not calling myself the king, but the kingly archetype that may flow through me in a certain moment like this is that I know what you can do if it's just you without the machine. I know what you're capable of. I know what you can feel. I know how deeply you can go into this. I know how visionary you can be. I know what comes through in your dream states. I know what happens in those moments of reconciliation and inspiration. And I want you to maintain contact with that, because it is going to be the norm. It's already become the norm. The people outsource their own individuation journey to a robot which isn't them, and you will find yourself in your 40s or your 50s or your 60s, 10, 20 years deep, feeling alienated from yourself, and the dissociative trend of not really knowing who you are or what you are, because ChatGPT has told you what you are for the last 10, 20 years. I'm looking out at 2030, 2040, 2050. That will catch up to you, and it's not a good position to be in at the end of life. Very passionate moment here. I see in the chat, I really needed to hear this. ChatGPT has become a therapist. I need to do the hard work on myself. I agree. I don't have ChatGPT on my phone. I don't use it personally. Elena, $1.99 in the chat. Yes, thank you for the super chat, Elena. I saw your message recently as well, and good luck with the work that you're about to do in your own teaching. I'll put that $1.99 towards my non-ChatGPT subscription. I have a mint to calm myself down. Relax, who started the conversation, said, I also see the scary aspect. I feel like I can't stop though, because of the positives. Damn, yeah, so you think I should stop forever? Brackets, I won't, but haha. Everyone's an adult. Everyone's an adult who can do what they want to do with their own psychology. Do I have the book that I want to pick out from over here? No, I do not have it. It's over there. It's over there in the stack. I'll save it for the video on YouTube. Everyone's an adult. You can use ChatGPT the way that you want to. For me personally, I know that there will be a point in the future where I will use AI tools in a way that most people are using it. I know, it will happen. I'm not so hardline that I'll never use ChatGPT in my life. There'll be a moment where I probably end up using it. What I'm interested in doing after 5 years of building this library and reading every day more or less for 4 to 6 hours per day, working with clients for anywhere between 15 to 20 hours per week, making YouTube videos about 20 plus hours per week for 4 years plus, 5 years research, 4 years with the coaching, 3 years with the YouTube. I want to see what happens with my raw human potential in the psychological space if I let my soul and my intuition guide me rather than information that's being spat back out at me from an algorithm and a robot. I think it's more interesting. But that's also my artistic temperament. The artistry of what I do, the heart of the work that I have here, is to feel my way through processes. There was a moment inside the Shadow Work Library where someone, one of the Sunday seminar calls, this is fantastic, if you don't know what we're doing in the Shadow Work Library, we've got live group coaching and we were fully booked out last week. We had 30 people in the classroom, 30 incredible men and women between, I think, age 20 and 70. It was fantastic. So full that actually people were stuck in the hallway. They wanted to knock on the door, they had their plastic chairs ready to bring in, but there was no room left at the inn, so we've expanded to American and European time zones. There'll be more on that later, but we're expanding, it's fantastic. The core of the therapeutic work is to be able to follow intuition when it comes to healing, and what ChatGPT doesn't have is intuition. What happened in this live stream, or in this group call, is that someone mentioned something related to one of their personal issues. I'm keeping it confidential. Someone mentioned something that seemed like this problem, and they kind of indicated it could be this. But then they focused on all this. And I was like, okay, this is the 4 points, there's more here. But I thought, you know what, this point over here, this aspect of the problem, that seems like the most important one. To me, in my perception intuitively, it seemed like it was this. It seemed like it was this thumb. This thumb was sticking up, ignore the 4 fingers, this is the actual problem, this is all distraction. So I focused on the thumb. I didn't know why, because rationally they were saying to me, this is the problem. These are the problems. This is the problem though, mainly these 3, this is the problem. In the live call, I didn't think it was that. I had something inside of me that this is the moment here. So I brought this out and I focused on it, and then later on in the conversation, the person said, you know what, I'm actually realizing in this moment that this is the one. This is the actual unconscious wound. The conscious information that was presented was up here. ChatGPT would respond to all 5 of these points, especially if you say rationally, this is the conscious information. You feed the conscious information into them, you get 4 fingers pointed back. This was lost in the process. This is picked up through intuition in the self-therapeutic aspect and working with a professional who knows what they're doing in terms of the clinical intuition. Book that I've been reading this week on the theme, fantastic book. Listening with the Third Ear by Theodore Reich. Oh, what a book. I've been loving this book this week. I've read a few books this week, including Transforming Priesthood, which is about how to revive the Anglican Church in England from the 1990s. I'm not trying to revive the Anglican Church in England back in the 1990s, but I'm interested in the archetype of the priest, so I read books about, priests doing priest things, even though it's completely unrelated to many aspects of my work. I like seeing how people use the energy. So I'll read books like being a priest, or I'll read feminine psychology books about being a sorceress or being a wild woman. I'm not actually a wild woman or a sorceress, I just enjoy understanding the archetypes, so read manuals for certain archetypes. Anyway, this is the archetype of the therapist. What are we doing with Theodore Reich? Theodore Reich was one of Freud's original students. Cool dude, very cool dude. He worked with Freud for over 30 years. One of the original dudes, 1910, 1920, 1930, he wrote this book in 1946 after over 30 years of practice, and the whole idea, this idea of listening with the third ear, is to follow the intuition and the hunches. Here's a quote. This is why I highlight the books. I'm going to read a line. Quote from the book, the whole principle I'm talking about, what ChatGPT will never really be able to do, won't be able to prioritize and get the feeling of a problem, the feeling of, okay, that's the main issue. So Theodore Reich is talking about training new psychoanalysts and the problems in the 1940s of trying to get a young man or a young woman to understand how to follow the clinical intuition, to not just go with the diagnostics and the labels and what they've read in the textbook, but to have the clinical intuition to look into the heart of the matter and heal the heart of the matter. Quote from the book. It might be a little bit messy on the intro, but it'll all come together on the underlined just at the bottom. The problem of training. The student is often taught to observe sharply and accurately what is presented to his conscious perception, but conscious perception is much too restricted and narrow. The student often analyzes the material without considering that it is so much richer, subtler, finer than what can be caught in the net of conscious observation. Final sentence. The small fish that escapes through the mesh is often the most precious. Let's tie this back into the ChatGPT question. I'm going to do something a bit crude, a bit on the nose, but hopefully it illustrates the point. I'm going to substitute the student for ChatGPT. ChatGPT is often taught to observe sharply and accurately what is presented to its conscious perception, but conscious perception is much too restricted and narrow. ChatGPT often analyzes the material without considering that it is so much richer, subtler, and finer than what can be caught in the net of consciousness and observation. The small fish that escapes through the mesh is often the most precious. It's a bit on the nose. I know I'm forcing the point. Just giving you a second time to hear those words as well. An AI algorithm is like the uneducated psychoanalytic student from post-World War II Berlin or New York, focused on the technicalities, focused on the information that they've accessed, but they haven't yet got the courage or the clinical intuition to then really go with the feeling. What I suggest that everyone here builds is the inner feeling of being able to do that work for themselves. It's why it's called the inner work. The reason I recommend so many therapist books for therapists isn't just because I have a sizable group of people who watch me who are therapists and coaches and healers, and I seem to be, helping them with their technical and business growth. It's because I learned how to heal myself by reading healing books written for healers, not healing books written for general population. Huge distinction. Huge distinction. You might have heard of the book No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz, Internal Family Systems. That's the public-facing book. I recommend that you don't read that book. I recommend that you read Internal Family Systems Therapy 2nd edition, which is written for therapists, because you will get the high-level, undiluted therapeutic insight on internal family systems as one particular example, rather than the public-facing, this is what a therapist waters down to then give a client. It could be a good starting point, but have sight on the professional books. Go into the professional literature because you're professionally healing yourself, right? And then you also develop clinical intuition. I mean, there's probably a few books around here. We could talk about meta skills. That's probably a good one. There we go. I'm going to recommend some books just on this theme. Amy Mindell, Meta Skills, The Spiritual Art of Therapy. This is an old school book. Super old school, kind of out there. When was this one published? This was published in 1995. Fantastic book. Let's look for some more out there kind of books. What have we got? Psychotherapeutic Change, Ordinary Ecstasy, Power and Helping Traditions. There we go. This is a good one. Ordinary Ecstasy by John Rowan, one of the leading humanistic psychologists in the UK. He was working in the 90s and the 2000s. This is about the process of healing in very much of a yin-yang way between therapist and client, or between man and himself. Fantastic book to go into. I've also got a book that's over there that I will pick up. And what, we're going to make a little journey. The back of the library, behind the 25 book stack that I've been delaying for the main YouTube video, I've got a clinical book for you. This is the one. Yeah, I understand it's mirrored, Peter. If my screen's mirrored, screenshot it, flip it on your camera. Like, I can't do anything about that. Just, you can do this. It takes 2 seconds. Screenshot it, flip it in your camera reel. You've got this. I know you've got this, Peter. We've all got this. This is a book. I think it's this one. Yeah. That's from the Norton Interpersonal Neurobiology stack. That's all the scientific books. I keep the dust jackets off of my books because I think they're ugly. I like the hardcover being out and about. Just opening it up. This book, Clinical Intuition in Psychotherapy by Terry Marks Tarlow. Right there. Screenshot this. Flip it around. That's the last book on the theme. To weave everything together and to put to rest the ChatGPT question for now. I know plenty of people were chiming in on the live stream. I saw the comments coming through. I got very passionate there, and I just worry. I really worry what we're doing to our potential. I really worry. We have so much hidden power. And if we can't form a foundation of understanding what we feel and what we believe and what we are without the support of a robot, we are doomed collectively 100 years from now. We'll have lost the soul of what it means to be a human. Everyone who's here, we're in the last generation of straddling the world between pre-internet and then pre-AI and what happens in the 2070s, 2080s, 2090s. It's a fantastic time to be alive, but let's be real, we are facing some major concerns of consciousness, and all we can really do is make the decision for ourselves of if we're going to use these tools in a minimal way, or we're going to let the dark shadow of the overly clutchy magician start to take control of our own inner work and lead us down a pretty, in my opinion, dark and foggy path. ChatGPT might illuminate in the forefront, but it's the illumination of blue light presented in a mechanical way, not the illumination of the inner light presented in an organic way. There's two different types of illumination. One is a sunrise on a beautiful hill. The other is an overhead light cast into your face like this. You might be able to see by this light, but you won't feel the warmth because it's cold. Just watch out for it. Why do you think I have a candle? Bit of a fun moment. I appreciate as well that I received a donation earlier on from New Life Bitch, I believe. New Life Bitch, thank you again. You donated last week. I appreciate it. $4.99 from New Life Bitch. Help me get off the ground with the intersection of shadow and projections and prejudices. I'm a new Jungian reader. Well, if you are a new Jungian reader, my first invitation genuinely is go to the link in the description, put your email in on my website, selfintegrationschool.com, and I will send you 6 books for the next 2 or 3 months of your reading. The majority of that is Jungian psychology. The classic book that I've been recommending is Meeting the Shadow essay collection. This one is over here. If you are brand new to the world, Meeting the Shadow essay collection. This one's getting a lot of love. I'm pretty sure that I've driven a couple hundred sales towards this book over on Amazon. And guess what? I have no affiliate links. I've never made a penny from recommending this book. I teach some of the principles of the book. I have a paid course, the Shadow Work Library, where this is one of the 36 books in the curriculum. But I don't do affiliate links because I want you to get the book wherever you get the book. That's a great place to start. If you're looking for Jungian psychology overall, then there's another book that I have, which is just over here. New Life Bitch. Coming through. You've already read that one. Done and subscribed. Fantastic. If you're in the 6-book reading list, that's a good one. This is another one you want to read. It's in that 6-book reading list, Jung's Map of the Soul by Murray Stein. This is the best introduction to Jungian psychology in a single volume. For example, here we've got an extract called The Ego's Shadow. Very heavily highlighted. You can see that I'm writing things down. That shadow is, I can't even read my own writing. Doesn't even matter. Energy, movement, and direction. More personality fragments, psychological types, complexes, transformations and symbols. This is a book that you want to start with if you're getting into Jungian psychology. I recommend it. Let's come back in on the chat. Let me know if you've been enjoying the conversation so far. We're 77 minutes in on a pretty wide-ranging shadow work conversation. So you haven't finished Meeting the Shadow just yet, but the Murray book is next. Very good choice. Very good choice. If you had a question that I didn't get to earlier on, please copy-paste your question, put it back in the chat. If you think it would fit the theme that we're going into in the library today, you think it'd be useful for you and somebody else, question, all capitals, and then write your statement, and I will be able to see you amidst the wonderful discussion that everyone's having between themselves. Wait for a question to come in. You know what? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a first time thing. I went for a walk before this live stream, and I thought if I'm going to push these boundaries and do live streams for 90 minutes, 2 hours, maybe even beyond 2 hours, there's going to need to be a moment where I take a little break in the middle to go to the bathroom. And I worried, what's going to happen to the live stream? Everyone's going to leave. No one's going to dare wait 60 seconds, 70 seconds while I go to the bathroom. You know what? If you're watching it on live replay, just skip forwards. I'll be right back. If you're watching me live, I'm going to go to the bathroom and get a fresh drink so I can stay for even longer, refresh my consciousness, and then answer the questions that are coming in. This is your 1 minute opportunity. Question in the chat. I'll then pick a few of them, and I'll be back in about a minute's time. Okay? I'll be back. I will be back. And I'm going to be refreshed. I'll see you in a minute. Enjoy the library. Enjoy the candle. Take a breath. Go to the bathroom yourself. Do something. Heal yourself. Maybe read a page in a book. Bizarrely, we seem to have gained viewers while I was away. Which is a rather unexpected situation. Isn't that weird? Conquered my fear of leaving you all behind, and I come back and there's more people here. It's almost like listening to my body's intuition to go to the bathroom led me on the right path. You'll notice now as well, my energy is more grounded. I'm more refreshed. I also gave my tracking an opportunity to refresh because I'm not looking at the screen. It's what I do in client sessions. If we were working together one-to-one, I used to do 3-hour client sessions, and then I reduced it down to 2 hours, but halfway through, I do a 5-minute break, and it's for the benefit of me and for the client, because I find that what tends to happen in a typical client session, this is a 4-month mentorship, like 4-month mentorship, 4 days per week. I do have spots available for February, 2 spots available. Message me on Instagram if you want one of them. But what happens in those 2-hour sessions, there's a spiral arc where we'll talk about a few themes. There'll be a previous accountability from last week. There'll be 2 or 3 themes that come through. There's 1 hour going through there, and then as we get to crescendo moment up here, drop the energy intentionally, 5-minute break, and guess what? Either we take it over here and continue, or a whole new spiral opens up for the second half of the session, and the refresh of just going to the bathroom and getting a breather. Fantastic. But let's see which questions came through. Gonna pick one that seems the most exciting for me to answer personally, so I can come back in with plenty of fresh energy. Oh, good question here from Julian Dank Daily Shows Memes. Julian Dank Daily Shows Memes. Do you have an opinion on how rap and trap music affects the subconscious? Should I quit listening to it to heal? It feels like a massive compromise, such a big part of my life and passion. No, I don't think you should fucking quit the music that you like listening to. I think that's ridiculous. I listen to a lot of metal music. Of course, metalcore. If you listen to metalcore lyrics, it's often very inspirational. For example, you listen to Parkway Drive or listen to Bullet for My Valentine. It's very much overcoming inner challenges. If you're spiritual and you like the chakra system, metal music has very 3rd chakra and 2nd chakra energy. It's all very self-empowering, self-expression, and then there's some heart within it. Rap and trap music tends to be a bit more root chakra, tends to be more power in it, but those lower chakra centers in terms of metal music or rock music or rap and trap, especially if you listen to drill music, that's particularly hard subgenre, enjoy it. Enjoy it. I listen to aggressive music on a more or less day-by-day basis. I was saying to one of my current clients only yesterday in a client session. I had a client session from 11:30 at night until 1:30 in the morning because I've emigrated halfway across the world to the Australian time zone. And I was there at 1 a.m. in the morning, still in a client session, end of my day, and I suddenly got into a passionate mini rant moment about listening to metal music while reading. Fun fact, if you didn't know this about me, 40% of my reading over the last 5 years has been done while standing up. I will take a book into my hands, I will stand up, and while I'm standing up, I will be moving around. So I'll be like this, swaying around. I'm not going to stand up because I'll be off camera, but like moving around, doing this, doing that. So I'll be kind of going up and down, I'll be changing space and levels, or I'll be leaning against the side of my desk or in the porch in the sunshine. I will be leaning in a way that takes the sunlight onto the page. 40% of my reading over the last 5 years, to my estimations, maybe 45% has been while standing up, and a good 50%, if not more, realistically probably more. How often am I listening to music when I'm reading? I'd say about 80% of the time while I'm reading, I'll listen to music. And when I'm listening to music, I'd say 60 to 70% of it is rock or metal music. Sometimes I'll listen to grime. I like Bugsy Malone, I like Central C. I think they're pretty cool. I'll listen to aggressive music. And I'll listen to aggressive music while reading very sensitive topics. How bizarre. Some people say they could never listen to music while reading. I like music. I grew up on metal music. I started going to metal concerts when I was a kid. I went to Download Festival in the UK when I was 10 years old because my dad was a goth, or used to be a goth when he was younger. So I went to Download Festival when I was 10, 11, went to a variety of metal gigs. I really enjoyed that. And I still like the music. I find the music energizing. So when I'm on my 3, 4, 5 hour reading sprees, I'll listen to heavy music, and I don't find it gets in the way of my consciousness at all. It actually supports me to draw the energy from the lower chakras. The reason I'm mentioning the lower chakra model is that often the resistance towards, I don't know, negative music is because it's all spiritually dense or it's low vibration. What if the hippies and the Namaste girls had more root and lower chakra energies available to them to be able to direct towards their righteous spiritual healing causes? What if listening to a bit of rock music, a bit of rap music would give you the energy to be able to go about and run your 5th sound bath of the day, or be able, in my situation, to be able to read more books to help more people? I see Irina saying metal shows are a massage for our inner organs. If you know, you know. I guess I get that. I see Colin 6 saying I'm a total goth in my soul. I'm pretty damn average looking now, but I'm good with that too. Someone says no light without dark. Someone else said earlier on, as we're looking at the chat for metal and rock lovers, let me know in the chat, are you also metal and rock lover? I found that the majority of my clients who I end up working with also have a similar music taste to me, and it's really interesting because I watch my stories and I'll see that I listen to this kind of music, and I think one of the distinguishing factors may not even be how professionally competent I am or how technically useful I can be to make a massive change in someone's life. I feel like people pick life coaches based on small personality quirks, honestly. If you're at a certain stage where you can afford pretty much whatever supportive figure you want, and you want to invest in something that's more high investment, like working with me, which is not a cheap situation by anyone's standard, things like having a similar metal music taste, or liking the gym, or I don't know, even in some cases looking similar, if it's a male client or if it's a female client who can relate to like a personal trauma history moment that I've shared. These small little things like music taste, or big things like a trauma history, can often create the resonance point. So it'd be interesting if in this live stream community we likewise have some rock and metal fans, or rap music as well. Got 9 Inch Nails. I see DC Fontaine's PG Harvey and Gregorian Chant all one day. Acid Bath. Highly recommend Bad Omens, since we have established mutual sleep token appreciation. I do like Bad Omens. I appreciate Bad Omens' work. Got some good songs, some good riffs. Very much a fan of the melodic metalcore riff. So that's kind of fun to go into. But what do you guys think? Do you think that metal music is good for the healing path? Taylor says, I absolutely love heavy metal music, especially in the gym. It's both a physical and mental energizer. I agree. Someone says, one of my dreams is to start a hardcore or sludge metal band. I'll be playing guitar and maybe doing vocals. Screaming seems to be so therapeutic to me too. I agree. I'd learn how to do screams if I could. I'm worried about my voice, and I know it's quite the effort. But I think in an alternative life, this is quite funny. In an alternative life, I'd go for like front man in a rock metal band and go for the screams. I'd really enjoy that. When I get into the visceral, I'm not going to do it on the live stream, but I can get a lot of power out of my scream, out of like a low, heavy, like I can make a lot of sound. I can project. I can really go for it. In the library right now, I'm not projecting. If I were to actually project and actually put my voice out, it's starting to warm up now. If I were actually to project, if I were to put my voice out, my voice, if my voice were to go to the back of the room and beyond the realm that I could possibly reach, like blah, 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 blah. Like, I love it. I love the feeling of speaking. I dim it down so I can speak for multiple hours. But if I need to speak in large spaces, I do have some history in theatre, and I'd enjoy projecting all the way out, and I think metal vocalist kind of stuff is pretty cool. Yeah, see some good conversations coming in. Avenged Sevenfold. Oh, I love Avenged Sevenfold. See Laura in the chat with Tool. Tool is fantastic. Big fan of Tool. Did some fire spinning with Tool the other month. I was listening to The Pot was on, but also Numa, I think, was on as well, and did some fire spinning with a fire staff. That's pretty cool. In an abandoned underground water tunnel. I never shared those stories ever on Instagram. Maybe I will someday. You guys want to see me spin fire while listening to Tool? It's funny, so much of my actual life, like my offline life, I do really cool things I just don't share on social media. I'll go places, I'll go on entire trips and never post anything online because I don't care for the whole look at me over in this place, look at me in this Airbnb or doing this cool thing. I'll take a few photos to have like a community post B-roll so I can do some writing underneath, which is mainly what I'm interested in. But I go places, and yeah, I enjoy doing things. Let's come back in on the questions. We've got some good metal music coming in, some good rock music. Anyone got a question for me? Gonna scroll back up on the chat again. We'll go into some inner work. I enjoyed that one. I enjoyed talking about metal and rap, and fundamentally, again, yeah, listen to the music that you need to listen to, and different music has different benefits. Brinny brings a question in, one of our metal appreciators, long-time community member. The more I heal, create, and challenge myself, there's an equal inner force that resists and pushes me towards stagnation. Is there something I can do to minimize the stagnation? The more quality output I'm able to generate, the compulsion for junky inputs increases. I've been trying to sit with it, letting it be for a couple of days, and not happy with this. Rinny, I think you're still here in the chat. Please feel free to expand on that. You said, is there something you can do to minimize the stagnation? What in particular are you asking me for? Are you basically saying that as you expand and get more creatively powerful, you also then have a different part of you which is more apathetic, more lazy, more prone to scrolling and junk content? Is that kind of the problem that you're encountering? Yeah, Rinny, still here in the chat. Let me know, is this the problem? And you want to try and break the pattern in one way or another? Taylor, in the meantime, says that they quit social media about a year ago and feel much more grounded in life. Claire says, how to stop being a junkie? I don't know. J Flem says, distraction, question mark. We're coming on that question. Brinny, please expand. We're focusing on you. I think a bit more context or a bit more specificity would allow me to really open up my awareness of how to serve you best. In the meantime, I'm going to hydrate. I see another question coming through about being a creator and when I want to recoil. So I'll come back in that one on a moment. We'll just see if Rinny expands. Rinny says in the chat, Well, it flat out feels like someone's holding me down, overeating, dissociating, and scrolling. Okay, so the essential issue is that you feel as if there's a part of you or some part beyond you which is sabotaging your progress in one way or another, right? There's a variety of ways to break this problem down. I'd need to know more about you as a particular individual. You say yes, okay. I'd need to know more about you as a particular individual. Common patterns that I see in terms of someone who gets to a certain stage of output or a certain stage of success and then crushes it or sabotages it in one way or another. Yes, it can be wounded inner child parts. Yes, it can be a misinterpreted need for a genuine break. All of these answers, look, okay, what's happening for me in this moment? This is why it's difficult on live streams. For me to give Rinny the answer that she needs for her particular situation, I need to know the entire life context, more or less. Because the advice that I give about, it could be a genuine self-sabotaging part, or it could be an inner child that needs love, or it could be some spiritual aspect, or it could be this archetypal thing. It depends on her. As a broad invitation, Rinny, but still a very precise invitation. Do you realize just how much you're worth? Do you realize what you're here for? Have you felt in your heart, and as I'm speaking these words, do you feel once again the reminder of what you are? You. Not just you, but you. When your consciousness shifts back into that perspective, and you say, I know what I'm here for, yes. When you recalibrate your consciousness onto that essential aspect of your identity, it's often the purifying fire which burns away the lower behaviors. You like metal music. You like your heavy music. If you listen to your favorite inspirational metal song, and it's got that get up, stand up, kind of you can do it energy, listen to that while tapping into what you are, and bring yourself out of the apathetic shutdowns or the overeating states. You're the one who has agency. There is higher power, there is higher self. But if you know what you are, lean into that, ignite that awareness once again. Snap out of it and burn away the bullshit. Yes, there's trauma conversation to be had. Yes, there's many things I could say about the wounded inner child or the abandoned inner child or about creative sabotage or about money wounds or about not wanting to be seen. That's all particulars I'd need to know your particular situation about. I've learned to know more about you over the months as many people in this community. You show up week after week and I enjoy building these conversations and these connections, but I still don't know you very well. As a broad principle, ignite the inner fire and let the warmth of what you are burn away everything that you're not. Overall principle, let it burn it all away. It's illuminated, it's empowering, there's a quiet in the space. I can feel it. In the collective energetic space, there's about 75 people watching right now. We all burn away the cobwebs. It's like a torch in the corner of a room. In this candle, ignites the cobwebs. Do that. This candle is going to gain a lot of symbolism over the year, I'm pretty sure, for these library live streams. Hope that helps. Come back in for another question. If you put question in. I see the question from earlier about creativity that came through. Question. Here we go. We've got it from Unacceptable Ideas with Jake Nelson. Jake, I hope this is an acceptable idea. Unacceptable idea with Jake Nelson. Jake says, as a creator, was there any point in which you experienced the recoil, as in severely doubting yourself and even sometimes embarrassment at seeing your own stuff? Yes, for sure. It was in the first year. Might surprise people who are here watching me in 2025 and seeing the fact that I'm almost 100 minutes into a live stream, and I'm here in this library, and I've got all this set, and I've got all these lights, and look, oh, here's the lights, and here's this, and I know what I'm doing, and it's visually optimized, and ooh, look at something in the foreground, and I figured this out over time. I figured out how to speak, I figured out how to improvise. All these things are many, many, many years deep. The time where I really struggled, Jake, was in my first year, and it was particularly learning how to speak to camera on Instagram, and I had a lot of negativity inside of myself because I'd yet to heal my self-critical, self-hating aspects through sustained trauma work. I started traveling after university full-time. I spent 2 years traveling. I went around Europe, lived out of a backpack for 2 years straight. If you don't know this about me, I lived for 2 years out of a backpack. The bottom third of my backpack was my gymnastics rings, the wooden gymnastics rings with the cables in between. I then had some books for like the next quarter, and then the rest of the 10-kilogram carry-on backpack was actual clothes and possessions. I more or less lived nomadically for the best part of 2 years. Occasionally I'd do longer stays, but I did 20 farm stays, community stays, working outdoors with animals and working on construction sites, eco-construction sites, conventional kind of construction in Germany, and all kinds of things in between. English language teaching, I did some snail farming in Ireland, I did some shepherding over in Tuscany. I was at an artist residence in Morocco. I've picked olives at about 4 different harvests around the world. I've done all kinds of things with my hands. During that time, I was also running an Instagram for the very first time. One of my best friends said to me when I was about a year deep into my travels, he said, Jordan, you need to start an Instagram and start documenting this. Because I didn't have an Instagram. I didn't grow up with social media as one of my main priorities. I enjoyed video games more as a teenager rather than doing MySpace. So I ignored that more or less. I was very, very, very resistant to start posting on Instagram because I thought, well, I've got nothing worth sharing, and eventually I just started sharing my poetry and my travels. But where it really became a problem was when I started to try and learn how to speak to camera. It was very, very intense. I'd have a moment, now I'll bring out my other phone, I had a moment where I'd be like this. This is me recording to myself, like this. That should be the angle. Yeah, like this. This is me back in 2018, I think. I'd want to do a 15-second story on Instagram. And I'd go like this. Fuck's sake. Every time I'd click, do it, and then I'd feel an enormity of energy inside of me. I'd feel everything come up and it would choke me out and I would not be able to speak to camera. I see Rinny in the chat saying, lol, that's me. Anyone can relate. Anyone who's tried to do content creation or speaking on social media, can you relate to that energy of freeze? You just freeze and your mind goes blank and you knew you were going to say something. You may have even written something out. You wrote out like the 2 sentences that you were going to say and like, okay, I'm going to say like, I'm in Ireland working on a snail farm. Hi guys, I'm in Ireland and I'm working on a snail farm. Have you ever worked with snails before? Share your snail-based stories in the comments. I don't know, maybe that's what I wanted to say 7 years ago. I'd have that ready and I'd still freeze. That lasted for a very long period of time. And the way to get through it, ultimately, was to just keep showing up and expanding the bandwidth. Once I got 15 seconds down on Instagram, you can make it a big psychological issue. You could say, you know, I need to do lots and lots of inner work around this, and you do, and it's going to happen in the background. But just building up the sheer capacity for extra seconds is what I did. I started with 15 seconds. Then on Instagram back in the day, you had to break up a story into 15-second chunks. You couldn't do like a minute at once. You had to do 15 seconds, then cut it, and then do 15 seconds. If people were using IG like 7 years ago, we had to do it this way. 15, 15, 15, 15. When I started on YouTube, I could only do about 3 minutes at once. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Here we are, 100 minutes deep into a live stream. You gradually get more and more confident. Gradually more and more confident. I see a question related from Essen. How did you find the guts to start a project back then? How to work on the fear of putting yourself out there? Honestly, one of my best friends kind of forced me to do it. He said, Jordan, you are, I can't remember the exact words, but he said something along the lines of, you have far too interesting a life and far too interesting a mind to not share what's going on inside with the world. And through his love and his support, I did it. I started, and yeah, we're still very close today, and we have conversations like this still. So I had a good friend on my side and other people along the way, and gradually I just kept building the courage and confidence to keep going. So yeah, I can see in the chat, yes, celebration to good friends. I see Relax asking a question about my backpacking days. What was the best part of traveling and backpacking? The most surprising thing you've learned? You know what? That's a fun shadow work question. It's not really, is it? It's kind of all about me. Do you want to know what? Do more people want to know what I did, what I learned from 2 years of backpacking around Europe? Like, is that something we're interested in? Should I share some stories about my backpacker days as a young, troubled man doing inner work on the road? That's what I used to do, is listen to podcasts while working in the farms, working on the construction sites. I used to journal down. I know you say yes. I see Relax in the chat saying yes, all caps, because you asked the question. That's why you want to know the answer to it. I see Sure Thing from Rini. I see yes from Artyom. Might do it. If I get a few more yeses in the chat. Healing Nature Girl says yes, please. What did I learn while backpacking? Owen says yes. Okay, we've got a few. Power of the live stream is that I get to be of service to the people who are here. Yeah, I see three more yeses in the chat. What did I learn from 2 years of backpacking? I suppose it's kind of interesting for some people. Most people haven't spent that long traveling full time, right? Jake also dropped $3.99 in the chat. Thank you, Jake. I'll read out what you said here. You haven't said anything. Just gave $3.99. Well, thank you. I'll put that towards the next book. Okay, we've got multiple yeses in the chat. What did I do while backpacking? I don't know. I spent 2 years doing it. I healed myself more or less at the foundational level. Jordan acts like everyone goes 2 years backpacking for fun. See, this is... Owen's right. Owen's right. To clarify, when I was backpacking, I was living on about £110 per month on average. I did it very, very, very cheaply because my backpacking was volunteer work. It was volunteer based. I moved from farm to farm, community to community, and I would spend anywhere between 3 weeks to 2 months at a single farm or a single community. Sometimes some moments in the city, but mainly in rural areas. And the whole setup in volunteer backpacking is that you show up at the place with your backpack ready to go, you sling it off over into the mud hut that you're going to be staying in, and you work for 5 hours a day, and you're given your bowl of cold porridge and your hearty crust of bread just to give you enough to get you through the next day of manual labor. It's not that Spartan, but in essence, that's kind of what you do. You go and work for 20 to 25 hours per week. You work with your hands primarily, and you get to learn new skills, be in new places, and travel the world very, very, very cheaply, which is fantastic if you've got a lot of inner things that you need to navigate. For me personally, I had all of my childhood trauma, all of that suicidal energy. Still in my early 20s, I was deeply fucking depressed. If you don't know my story, because you're new to my channel, I had very, very dark energy from age 10 all the way through up to when I graduated university at age 21. When I was 21, I finished university at one of the top universities in the UK, one of the global top 100 universities at Russell Group University, which is like the Ivy League, but in the UK. I got the best possible grades. I did the best out of my college of 300, 350 people. I graduated with my history degree. I got my double first. I had all the scholarship options. I did fantastically. But guess what? I was fucking miserable on the inside. I was smart, but I was very sad. And I knew that I needed to take 2 years to go and heal myself. I thought it'd be 3 years. But basically go and work with my hands, go and heal my dissociation and take a break from all of the world of ideas and take a break from being myself as well. That was my main intention with travel. When people hear the word backpacking, they think that I was going round on party bus and getting drunk, and that wasn't what I was doing. In fact, while traveling, in my second year of traveling, I went completely sober. I also went vegan for a period of time. I'm now pescatarian, I guess. I eat fish and eggs, but no meat. I haven't eaten meat in about 6 years. But in my second year of traveling, I gave up drink and drugs and cigarettes while in a hippie camp in Portugal. When everyone else was doing all of this, I got that inner soul awakening of, this isn't for me. It was a bit more aggressive on the inside. On the inside, it was like, you fucking fool. Do you realize how much you're worth? Do you realize what your brain could do? Do you realize the strength of that beating heart? numb it all out. I did that for a while as well. Started smoking when I was 15. The wacky tobacco. Tried that. Tried drinking, tried partying, tried success at school, success with women, all the things. I condensed it into a pretty small time period. So by the time that I was 21, I could then graduate from university and graduate from the old infantile patterns of my own psyche. And I went traveling. My traveling years were primarily healing years. If someone's looking for a change of life for 6 months and you want to live very cheaply while getting a lot of time to yourself, work 5 hours a day with your hands, get the weekends to yourself, take some books with you, and enjoy the fact that you could take 6 months or a year off to put yourself back together. It worked for me. I wouldn't do that now because I have more money accessible to me, but back then I didn't have the money available. So I saved up in my final job at university. During the summers, I worked as a cleaner, literally scrubbing toilets for my university campus. That was my first proper job. I was scrubbing toilets, cleaning down bed frames and all this kind of stuff, vacuuming. If you've ever done a student accommodation cleaning gig, you'll know how disgusting some of those bathrooms can get. That's what I did. I think it was £8 an hour, something like this. And I saved very aggressively during that summer. I spent on almost nothing. So when I graduated, I had a couple grand to be able to sustain myself for a long period of time. That was what I did in terms of my overall backpacking setup. In terms of what I learned about myself, this is the initial question. What did Jordan learn from 2 years of working with his hands and traveling around Europe? One thing that I learned is that I'm not very good at working for other people. Surprise, surprise. I can do it. I can take instructions. I can follow through on a task. But one of the major challenges I had while working is seeing the inefficiencies of work environments and wanting to do things in the quote-unquote better way. Of course, as a young man, I made some more arrogant moments where it wasn't the better way. I was just inflated, but oftentimes within that arrogance, within the grandiosity, within the uncalibrated, pre-healed kind of traumatic Jordan that was, edgy and needs to fucking do something, I did still see that this is inefficient. The way that we're working is inefficient. The way that this project's inefficient. I was like, this just isn't the way. And likewise, related point, I learned a few things about myself in regards to what I need energetically to do my best work. Right now, I've built my business over the last 5 years intentionally to be able to have a lifestyle that supports my character, my temperament, and my bodily rhythms. Curiously, that means starting my days very late. This is shadow work of the weekly routine. If you're somebody who has control over your own schedule, make a schedule that works for you. I don't do crazy morning meditations and morning routines and rituals and optimized power hours or anything like this. I don't wake up at 4:30 a.m. in the morning. I'm still awake at 4:30 a.m. in the morning doing work with clients or preparing things for YouTube. I typically finish my work days anywhere between 3 o'clock and 5 a.m. These days, to my fault, I've been going a little bit later, sometimes around 6 a.m. And then I will add 9 hours and sleep. So if I go to bed at 5 o'clock, add 9 hours, that's usually when I wake up. If I go to bed at 2 o'clock, add 9 hours, that's when I wake up. My overall rhythm of life is I like staying up late. I like doing work, I like doing work late at night. So when you're volunteer traveling and you're working on other people's schedules, especially working with the sun, right? You need to wake up for the sun. To be waking up at 7 a.m. to go do work under someone else's instruction, it's not the life for me. Not the life for me in the slightest. And that also contributed to poor mental health on my side, because I used to believe that because I wasn't so good at waking up and being quick in the morning, that somehow made me ineffective, or it made me, what's the word? Like I'm somehow lazy. Do you think I'm lazy? Do you think I'm not a hard worker? Probably not, based on what you've seen from me on YouTube. But if you demanded me to be able to get up and do great work in 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m. kind of territory, I've never been good at it, ever. ever. Even at school, I struggled a lot when I was at school because I hated waking up early. I wanted to stay up late. Now I've built my business around primarily an American client base where I get to do late night sessions. If someone's in California, it's 8 hours behind London time. So I can do a session with them at 4 o'clock and it's midnight for me and I get to be fully awake. So yeah, that's one of the major things I learned while backpacking. I learned about my own rhythms and my own temperament and my own tendency to have slower starts in the morning and then more energy gains throughout the day. I don't need hours and hours and hours, but I like having 9 hours of sleep. I like having some quiet time in the morning, and then I really come up and rise up as the day continues, and then I can consistently do it for weeks and weeks in a row. I see people in the chat saying, Jake Nelson, great stuff, man, time to unplug, but thank you again, Jordan, truly helpful, take care, brother. Thank you for asking the question, and thank you again for the donation earlier on. I see work awaying is good practice for becoming a bit disobedient though, because you have nothing to lose if they fire you. At least for me, that used to guilt trip myself. That's a very interesting perspective. I see Prima Ballerina saying I wake up around 4 a.m. or earlier because the rest of the family is asleep and my house is quiet. Well, I mean, there's a psychology, right? Like, if it's quiet at 4 a.m., you can wake up at 4 a.m. or you can stay awake till 4 a.m. Of course, I have a very particular lifestyle. I don't have young children, for example, so I can build my life around what I need. It's one of the major lessons I've learned while backpacking anyway. Learned how to heal myself, and I gave myself the time to properly understand my own psychological patterns. I see that we've still got about 80 people watching live. Someone says, do you not live in the Oxford area? I live in the south of England, near London, but not exactly in Oxford. So I am in the south. Initially I grew up near Birmingham, which is where I was raised. I was raised in the Midlands area. Question from Bernhard. How can I heal from a period of 40 days of not listening to my inner voice? It was a soulless period that I am not grateful for. My family used to kill that voice for 19 years. Bernhard, I don't fully understand your question. If you're asking how can you start listening to your inner voice, use a journal. If you want to get in contact with your inner voice, start capturing your inner voice on a journal. That's my my best suggestion. As a really simple way. I'm not going to overcomplicate it. Use a journal, start writing out. CLAS says, when everyone is asleep, you can hear the Earth's voice clearer. Inspiring. It's poetic. I agree. I often feel, this is maybe my more woo-woo side, when I'm awake late at night, say 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and most people are asleep, I almost feel that the energy of the neighborhood is calmer and there's more room for my ideas to expand. I live in a rural place. It's not like it's a busy city environment, but even the couple hundred people in the immediate neighborhood area, when they're all asleep and they're dreaming, I get more space to think. I often go for very late night walks along the golf course into the woods. I put my weight vest on like an absolute madman, and it's 1 a.m. and I'm wearing all black and I've got this weight vest on, and I'm going for a long contemplative walk. I enjoy it. I really enjoy it. I find it calming, I find it grounding, I find it inspiring. Because I have international clients, I'll often be on the phone while going out for a walk. I mean, a Californian client, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, midnight for me. Just get on the phone, go up the golf course, have a little informal call with the client. I have formal sessions and often informal calls in between. Find it really nice, find it inspiring, and there's more room to think, for sure. Alex said, how would I manage inner work if I were in the same situation as I were back in university? Alex, I will tell you. When I was back at university and my mental health was poor, I knew my mental health was poor. I wasn't amazed by the fact that I was suicidally depressed back then. I knew it was a problem, but, what alternative do I have but just to get through the 3 years? Realistically, what alternative did I have? Some people would say take a year off. I didn't do that. Personally, I did the best that I possibly could, knowing that when I graduate university, I will take the 3 years for myself. I knew by the middle of my second year at university that I'd do 3 years roughly of volunteer traveling. My idea was, when I was 20, my mental health is dreadful. I'm physically fit, I train 5 days a week, I eat decently well, I'm still a healthy young man, but mentally I'm very poor. I knew halfway through university, 3 years of university, 3 years of traveling, and I set myself the delayed gratification goal of I will get through this year, I'll get through my dissertation, I'll get through my specialist subject, I'm going to absolutely crush this degree. I did. And then I gave myself the reward of fully devoting myself to healing and inner work. But I'm kind of extreme. It's not the best advice for everyone. All I'm doing is sharing my own story. My own story is that I delayed my gratification and I compartmentalized. I did everything I could in terms of symptom management. I had cold showers in the morning. I'd go and do bioenergetic exercises in my student accommodation. I still did my best to maintain meaningful romantic relationships, social relationships, work relationships. I did everything I could to keep myself afloat rather than drowning under that suicidal dark energy. But the way that I did that was I set myself a goal that when I'm finished with this degree, I will then go and travel. And that's what I did. I thought I'd need 3 years, I only needed 2 years. I followed through my intention, I just delayed the gratification to the future. And if you want a bit of insight into a related point about what I'm doing with my life now as a teacher of a certain standing who's got more and more impact and responsibility in the world, there's a few interesting things behind the scenes where there's more possibilities, there's more invitations to do podcasts or workshops, more money coming in than ever before. I'm grateful for how well I get to be paid for the work that I love doing. But with these kinds of successes also comes distractions and diversions. So I've likewise planned out a strategy of another year of filming the self-integration school curriculum in this library, probably another year of teaching the self-integration school, admissions only, small group sizes. I love what we're doing in the Shadow Work Library community right now with the Sunday seminars. It's so electric and I want to continue this at depth. But I'm pushing away into the future, probably my next version of traveling and socializing and, gratifying, but also a different chapter of life until realistically mid-30s kind of energy. Right? And I'm pushing off into the future. So my psychology is that I compress and compartmentalize with consciousness, and I'll create longer time chunks to then be able to go into the future. I understand that current version of Jordan is not future version of Jordan, and I'll let current version of Jordan go through a bit of pain if that pain is a necessary factor to get to the next level and get to the next stage. So at university, I went through quite a bit of pain, but I still fucking did it. And I'm proud of the way that I did it. And that was just my temperament. Other people might need to take a break. Other people might need to be more balanced. I didn't do it that way. I would work. I'd get into the university, usually about 11 o'clock, and then work until about 2 a.m. and do that 6 days a week. So that's what I actually did. Usually not the best advice for most people. Best advice for most people is take time for yourself, take time to go away from mini retreats, do all this kind of stuff. So yes, that's what we're doing there. I see Leslie. At what time are the Sunday seminars on the Shadow Work Library? Thank you, Les. Well, I've got a special announcement that I should have probably put into a community post, and I might do later this week. But the Shadow Work Library, my new community, course and curriculum, has expanded. The initial calls were at 7 p.m. until 8:30 p.m. UK London time, because I thought that would be the best time around the world. Because things have gotten bigger, and I want to keep these class sizes small. Under 30 people, ideally under 20 people. I've now expanded this week into an American time zone as well. So we've got 7 p.m. UK time and 7 p.m. New York time, which is 12 o'clock until 1:30 a.m. London time. So I'm going to be running 2 seminars this weekend for the first time so that we can get 2 classrooms of 20 or 2 classrooms of 30 and keep the things small. So now, Les, you have the option if you're thinking about joining the Shadow Work Library, but previously when you went to the checkout page, you thought, London, 7 p.m, that's not the time for me, or you can't attend it. We now have a New York time for all of my American friends who want to have a later evening or late afternoon session. If you're in California, 7 p.m. New York time, that's the American session. 7 p.m. London time is UK session. It's a pretty exciting time in the Shadow Work Library. I get the opportunity to open up a second classroom within the first month of opening the doors. Very grateful. Imagine how I feel as a teacher, that a month ago, very start of this month even, I opened the doors and already we've got a full classroom, and I've got the wonderful problem of not everyone can fit in, so I need to open up another classroom and bring everyone in there and do 2 sessions on the Sundays. You're welcome to join. Link in the description. Very proud of the work we're doing there, and you'll hear more from me as well if you're on the email list. I'll be sending out the newsletter. See in the chat, what have been the benefits of avoiding dairy? A fun question. I see 69 people watching live. 69 people watching live, and we're going to talk about why I don't eat dairy. My benefits of avoiding dairy is that when I was in Germany, I worked on an organic farm, a high quality farm, one of the best qualities in terms of the certification that you could get. And part of that farm was a dairy farm where there were, at the time I was there, perhaps a dozen dairy cows and also perhaps 2 dozen calves. And I worked in dairy as part of my work there. I would the cows would be led in and they'd be put into the machines, they'd be led down, they'd be sucked out, and then you'd take these massive vats of milk and you'd pasteurize them and then into cheese and all these kinds of things. I got to see what it was like to be involved in the dairy industry at the literal udder side of things, the udder truth of the dairy industry. At the highest quality farm, really cool farm. That was fine the first year. Didn't really notice anything about it. The second time I went back to the dairy farm, I'd changed as a man. I'd already started to understand who I was, I'd healed some trauma, I could see a bit clearer, and when I went back into the same work environment and I saw the cows, I saw the baby calves being separated from the mothers, I used to go out with a pail of milk. Imagine this. Mommy cow goes into the dairy, gets her udders plugged into the electric suction cups, and it goes... and the huge massive vats, like 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 litres of milk coming out. These massive things, you have to wheel it out. And then you'd go and you'd scoop up some of that milk in a little plastic bucket. And on the end of the plastic bucket, like this, there'd be a little udder teat, like a red plastic nozzle. And you'd go out like this, and you'd do it again. And you'd go out of the dairy. You'd walk over through the farm to where all the calves were being kept. And you see the calves' eyes light up. These cows weren't that old. They're under a year old. And they'd come out and they'd try and drink the milk. Oh, cute. Oh, look, I get to feed the calves. But when you really understand like the desperation in those cows and the energy behind them, and I was really feeling it. Like I didn't plan for this. I love milk. This is an important disclaimer. I grew up drinking a lot of milk. When I started bodybuilding, I was drinking pints of milk per day. Very classic, old school, early 2000s, like bodybuilding philosophy. Drink your gallon of milk a day. I used to drink a lot of milk. I really enjoyed it. I remember being at college, age 16, 17, when I first started going to the gym. I'd always go and buy a pint of milk at lunch. Easy 250 calories or something like that. I used to love milk. I used to love the taste of it. I never had any real problems in terms of dairy, like with... I don't know, maybe I got some inflammation or some digestive stuff, but I never had any major issues. But the energetics of going out with the milk that was meant to be in the mother's teat, giving a fake teat to the calves, eventually something just clicked inside of me and I lost all appetite for dairy and I saw the cruelty. And I saw the cruelty and the slavery of one of the top tier farms because I was literally in the environment. I could smell, I could see, I was participating. I'd never have been able to get that experience if I just watched a video on YouTube, and I don't advocate or preach that everyone needs to do this. I think everyone gets to make their own choices. But for me personally, the reason that I haven't eaten dairy for a very long period of time is because I have a literal experience of working on dairy farms, and I don't support it. So what it does to me in terms of consciousness is it helps me to feel like a man with integrity because I had a negative experience, and I follow through on that negative experience by not going through with it. I see Christo saying I lived on a dairy farm for a year. Be interested to hear your experience, Christo, in the chat. For me personally, I thought there were some good sides of it, and I don't think the whole industry is evil. It's like you have one cow, like you have one cow or 2 cows on your land and you treat them really well and you take just enough milk. I think there's a different relationship, but to have more organized farming, for me personally, I just didn't like the energetics of that. I also understand that it's a very complex issue. Everyone's got their own opinions. I get to choose what I do or don't put into my body at the very least. So that's what I choose to do with that. I see in the chat, the mothers of the world being taken advantage of once again. Is this someone else saying that's so traumatic? I've only seen videos. Someone else said the machination of animal cruelty is one of humanity's saddest inventions. And yet at the same time, I eat fish and I consume organic eggs. I try and get the highest quality eggs that I can. I'm a pretty, I'm a grown man. I'm 6 foot tall, about 190, 191 pounds. I train 4 or 5 days per week. It's really important for me to be able to eat about 3,000 calories. When I went pure vegan for about 6 months, I got weak and my brain didn't work so well. I reintroduced fish. I literally cried when I ate fish for the first time after 6 months of being vegan. Did a fast for 48 hours. Then I thought, I should really eat fish again. A month later, did another fast for 48 hours. I should really eat fish again. Even as I say that, I actually got a growl in my stomach to start eating fish. So interesting, my stomach just went off. My body responds well to it. Try and minimize the cruelty to get the maximum nutritional benefit, and also I pray over any animal that I consume. I'll take a moment when I eat fish, or a moment when I eat organic eggs, to just thank the chickens, or thank the fish. Something like, want to acknowledge the salmon that's in front of me. Your life is taken so that my life may continue. I bring your energy into my body to become a part of me, and become something more than you'd be on your own. Today, I'd like you to support me in doing my best possible work for the live stream, to help people. With your energy becoming my energy, may we work together. Amen. Something like that. Whatever it might be of the day. Chicken, I'm eating an egg, just an egg, 3 eggs, maybe 3 fried eggs with a bit of bread. Want to acknowledge the chickens who are in front of me. Although they are still alive and hopefully living happy lives on a nice organic free-range farm, I don't know, and fundamentally they are still enslaved within the system. They are. Just be real, just accepting. Like from the very beginning of this live stream, if you've been here the whole time, we spoke about this idea of being honest about the parts of your children that you dislike. To be honest about the fact that I'm about to enjoy these delicious organic eggs, and yet these eggs are a product of an animal being enslaved. It's okay, it doesn't need to be dramatic. I'm not fighting the system. Just a literal, neutral truth. Those chickens are commodified to produce eggs which I buy and then eat. The minimum I can do is say, chickens, I genuinely appreciate your efforts. Some of your energy goes to me. Your life is ultimately sacrificed so that mine may continue. I appreciate you. Thank you. Welcome to my body. Small things like this. And I don't eat meat, haven't for 6 years or so. I don't eat dairy, because I don't believe that the consciousness sacrifice will be worth the nutrition I gain at this stage of my life. If I get new information in the future, some kind of health challenge or something that my body tells me, I'm pretty in tune with my bodily intuition with fasts and eating mostly organic things. If I got a very strong message that I suddenly need to eat red meat, I'd listen to that, because I also know that my consciousness as a human being is worth way more than the consciousness of 100 cows. But that's me as an independent man making that choice, and you may disagree with me. For me, in my actual life and my role in the world, I don't know how many cows do you think, like, to save one Jordan Thornton, to sustain one Jordan Thornton, to be able to think the way that I think and speak the way that I speak and do what I do with my weeks, how many cows would you sacrifice from planet Earth? I don't know, that's on you. I mean, in the community chat, hopefully at least 1 cow. I don't know. How many cows are worth 1 Jordan? It's like my camel price if I was a bride in an old Arabic desert. How many cows am I worth? You get to decide the same question for yourself, and you then get to come back. I see Chris Churcher in the chat. The Shadowwork Library is the dietary equivalent of organic whole foods and clean water for the mind. Chris is one of the students inside the Shadowwork Library, and if Chris is saying, I mean, Chris, come on. You're going to give away the fact that I'm paying you to put in these planted testimonials in the live stream. The Shadowwork Library is the dietary equivalent of organic whole foods and clean water for the mind. Brother, glad you're having a good time inside the Shadowwork Library. I agree. I agree. We're trying not to do junk food inside the private community, and the course will last you at least a whole year. We've got 11 months of course, link in the description if you want to get involved. I will be raising the prices next month. First time mentioning that publicly, I'm going to raise them by at least 20 or 25% because I'm going to be expanding the capacity, so if you want to lock in the price, discount code 675, link in the description. Shadowwork Library. I see in the chat how many cows am I worth. Hopefully at least 1 cow. Archim says I'm worth 2 cows. Probably agree. Christo says, do you find it takes a lot of energy to be perfect dietary-wise? No. Not at all. And I'm not perfect dietary-wise. When I gave up meat, yeah, exactly, what would be perfect? When I gave up meat and dairy, I gave up meat and dairy and it just stopped. When I gave up drink, it just stopped. When I gave up weed, it just stopped. Earlier in this live stream, I answered Rinny's question about how to basically stop self-sabotage and how to get all integrated in terms of your actions and intentions lining up. How do you become an integrated, authentic person where things don't take energy? You have to clutch, you don't have to hold things together. Maybe like you've got ropes stretching out and it takes lots of energy to hold it all together. And at any moment it could slip and you try and grab it. Like, how do you go from this tense to more of a relaxed, you know, I'm just gonna tie it down, tie it down. Same outcome. A huge part of that for me is moral consciousness and ethical consciousness. With dietary choices, with sobriety choices, this is easier and easier the more conscious you become. Overly simplifying things, but I've noticed a very clear correlative arc that as I become more aware of what I am in a spiritual sense, I build my relationship with my soul, build my relationship with God, it becomes more and more obvious to me, especially if I combine that spiritual and godly union with a somatic union with my flesh, that this body is truly a divine place. Your body too, not just my body. I haven't got the sacred flesh and you have the unsacred flesh. We all have sacred flesh. And if you understand the sanctity of your guts and the sanctity of your heart and the sanctity of your mouth, you don't put things inside of you that are dead or polluted or otherwise not serving your goals. I'm not perfect with this, but generally it tends to get easier and easier. Generally speaking, the main challenge that I have now is with my screen consumption, when you're consuming via the screen. Already, I've created boundaries where I don't use YouTube or social media for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. No Instagram until Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're talking in the Shadowwork Library, and we had a post actually that I put up just this week inside the Shadowwork Library community. I put a post up, a community poll of how have you been in terms of your screen time. We're trying to hold each other accountable, because I said 2 weeks ago in one of those calls, I'm not going to take my online phone into the bedroom, and I haven't done it. I don't take my online phone where I've got the ability to look at YouTube into the bedroom, so I don't have the ability to watch in bed or wake up in the morning and do this. There's still consumption. It's like perfect diet, perfect mental diet. Boundaries get easier and easier the more conscious you get, and for me, one of the simple definitions of consciousness is you know what you are, and you love what you are, and as a result of that knowledge and that self-love, you surround yourself with conditions, with people, and the consumptive processes that you generate and repeat on a week-by-week basis, they just raise in union with your level of self-awareness and self-love, and it's generally the path forwards. I hope that kind of adds to your question, Christo. You said, how do I maintain the perfect diet? I don't know what perfect diet means, but in terms of giving up meat or dairy or crappy things, generally they just fall away. They just burn away. It just burns away. I see Gabrielle saying, morally I feel better eating strictly fish. Yeah, I agree. Got a few things coming through on the chat. Tell you what, I'm going to see a few more questions. I see that we're, from my side, 135 minutes in, which I think means officially, for anyone who's watching live, this is the longest ever live stream that I have done on the internet. Pretty good job. I knew I wanted to show up today and serve. I've been getting in my head a little bit more as things get bigger and bigger about what's the best use of my time when I can't get back to everyone on a weekly basis because there's too many comments, too many messages, too many emails. How do I best use my energy? And today I knew to get myself out of my head and bring myself back into the world and bring myself back into the service towards you that I'd want to do a long live stream. And I knew I'd go over 2 hours. So here we are, over 2 hours deep, and I'm very happy to be here. I've got 48 minutes until my next client call. So I'll see how much we can do until then. See Claire in the chat donating €2.49. I can also like your donation. Give your donation a like. I can actually give it a love, I think. No, I can't. Other people can give it a love. I can report you as well. There we go. I've loved your donation, Claire. I haven't reported you or banned you from the channel. I appreciate the $2.49, and I will put it to the next book. I appreciate everyone as well, by the way. In the last live stream, I've been getting donations. I think I've received a few over the last 5 months, but last live stream, a lot of donations came through, and I feel like I've got another 3 or 4 books I can buy as a result of that. And I can see a nice cheeky tenner came my way this time around, which is at least 1 more book. And as a shout out to earlier on, Jung's Map of the Soul might be a good choice if I hadn't already read it. Maybe I'll buy a second copy, give it to my neighbour. See Claire saying, thank you for all you've taught me. You've made me ponder with the book recommendations. Claire, thank you. Thank you for the money as well. But it was a good use. That was actually a good point. You know what? I want to talk about this. This is a good shadow. Shadow work. Christo says, tell us more about the shadow work library. Brother, link in the description. Previous Jordan has spent 30 plus hours making a checkout page where I've got all the information optimized for you to learn the most about it. Current Jordan is in the void zone of updating that checkout page to include all of the community testimonials, which I've yet to gather because I haven't asked people in the community to give me testimonials just yet. But as you saw earlier, Chris, about 10-15 minutes ago, he's one of the students inside, and he said that the Shadow Work Library is like an organic diet for the mind. You can see the link in the description. You'll be able to go to the Shadow Work Library checkout page. You'll be able to get £675 rather than £750 if you sign up for the newsletter. That is for a full lifetime access to a 36-book curriculum, the best shadow work curriculum on the internet. It took me 4 years to read those books and then choose the top 36. That's a 9-module process. Typically, that takes people 6 to 12 months to work through in their own time. And now for 2025, we've got a live community circle space where you get to do weekly Sunday seminar calls, 90 minutes every week. Fantastic in January. We've had some great calls and also private messaging with intelligent, introspective, intense individuals that we see inside of this live stream as well. Honestly, for $675, if you know what high quality academic-oriented spaces charge, this is a steal, quite honestly, which is why I'm raising the price next month. I'm aware that I've been undercharging for what's happening inside of there, but I wanted to create the opportunity. So if you want to get the best price, come in this month. I was going to mention about money. That's what I was going to mention, because the 1090 is up on my screen, and this is a nice shadow moment, the shadow of finances. Glad that we get to talk about this today. For anyone who's watching the live replay, they can scroll all the way through. Christo, if you want to join the Shadow Work Library, I will happily welcome you in with a voice note. We've got a great structure inside. I put a lot of love into that course, and the community is popping off. You're going to find some good friends in there, I guarantee it. I already see people making friendships, and maybe something more as well. I see a few exchanges happening in those group calls. Who knows? Maybe babies in the Shadow Work Library 2026. We'll find out. Chris says, Christo, it's legit. This is one of my Shadow Work Library students coming in to back me up, one of my hype men in the chat. Christo, it's legit. He says, if you're serious about your reading and personal growth, there's no better place. Chris, you will make me blush. Chris and I have been talking in the Shadow Work Library this week. And yeah, there's a happy student. I don't know, maybe message Chris. Chris is my new sales rep. He's going to get commission, I'm sure. Let's talk about the shadow of money. So, a few questions we can do here. I'm going to try and go as deep as I can on this topic, and maybe we'll keep this as the final topic for the final bit of the video. And Chris says, I'll send you an invoice later. Well, it's only appropriate, Chris. There's a few things we can talk about in regards to money wounds and money psychology. As I say money wounds and money psychology, I just got given a $20 Canadian donation, which I'm going to read out. I appreciate that. You know what? I appreciate the humor there. Thank you for the donation from, is it Illusdrecht or Illudrecht? I can't tell if that's 2 L's or Ustrecht. Please let me know. You said, thank you for your light. I found you from your 5-book recommendation recently. I'm a 40-year-old man and have a deep mother wound. What book would you recommend to get started? Gonna get you in on that one. What mother wound book would I recommend? There's a few. I'm gonna show you this one. This is before we get into money wounds. Because someone gave me some money, and they're gonna get this one, and they're gonna get yeah, this one. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Brother, thank you for the money. Before we talk about money, I want you to screenshot these books and then reverse them on your camera reel. I want you to read Into the Heart of the Feminine. This is for the mother wound. It's going to really help you on some of the psychological aspects. Screenshot this one, Into the Heart of the Feminine. And also a book that I have seen work many times over with adult sons of adult women as they look back over their childhood with the mother wound. Classic book, Codependence by Charles Whitfield. These two books together will give you a good trauma psychology perspective and a good Jungian psychology perspective, and together you'll find some insights into deeper inner child work and overall some pretty insightful realms for further discovery. But those two at the very start. Appreciate the donation. Let's stay on track with the financial wound stuff. What's your relationship with money? Good place to start. Does money have any particular charge for you? This is a live moment. We're going to bring out a few questions and see what people's relationship is with money. For me personally, I had to do a lot of money psychology work because I grew up in a family that didn't have that much money. I didn't grow up with wealth. I didn't grow up with intellectual wealth either. If you've heard me say this before, I have to repeat my story because other people haven't heard my story before. It's not because I want to talk excessively about myself, it's just part of being a YouTube entertainer. If I had it my way, I wouldn't share that much about me at all, which is why it took a lot for me to start writing my book back in December, where I talk about my trauma history and childhood history. But in essence, I grew up in a household where money was always a problem. My family did not have good money stories. There would frequently be arguments at a very passive, low-grade level of frustration and agitation. I remember going food shopping with my mother. We'd go to the food, we'd go along the aisles, and we'd always look at the bottom aisles in the UK. The cheap stuff, you know, the store brand baked beans, the store brand bread, the store brand honey. Try and get the cheapest of cheap. Rather than getting the 60 pence tinned peaches, get the 19 pence white labelled, like tinned peach, by big supermarket. Rather than getting the nice loaf of bread, get the cheapest possible loaf of bread. And then occasionally, there'd also then be the big spending moment. But my classic childhood conditioning around money, especially around money and food, is that there'd then be the moment. Unfortunately, due to old trauma patterns, where I'd be in the passenger seat coming back home from the supermarket with my mother, and I'd remember my father opening the door. He'd walk up to the door, have his hand out, ready to receive the receipt. Why did you spend 40 pence on this? Straight away. Straight away. Looking at the price, assessing the price. Money was tight. There's all kinds of things around the story. I'm not trying to blame or shame. I'm just trying to give you context from my conditioning around finances. There was never enough. You got to be careful in your spending. A lot of the stories that I grew up with in terms of my money psychology, I was thinking about this only earlier in the week. I remember that even for birthdays, when I go to a restaurant, you know, it's you can go out for a meal for your dinner. Maybe I'll be 9 years old or 12 years old. I would immediately, upon getting a menu at a restaurant, look at the cheapest possible option. And in the UK at the time when I was a child, it would usually be the 2 for £10 options. And I'd say as my authentic choice that, oh, I want the, I don't know, I want the gammon steak and chips, or I want the fish and chips, or I want the chili con carne, like the small portion or whatever it was when I was 11, 12 years old, because it was the 2 for £10, because then I'd think, well, oh, maybe my mother would then bring in the other, you know, £5 dish, rather than possibly looking at the £8 meal or the £12 meal. I really, really was stuck in that psychology, because I learned from a very young age, from that ritual of checking the receipt for, you spent an extra 15 pence on the fucking peaches. Money is not for me. Don't get expensive things. And the criteria for expensive things was also pretty low. And it was very confusing, I think, when I was growing up, to be in a family environment where, on the one hand, it's your birthday, let's go out for a meal, get whatever you want. Conscious level communication. Maybe people can relate to this, is why I'm really theatricizing it. Conscious communication, get whatever you want. Unconscious communication, don't you dare fucking spend any money. What are you meant to do as a little boy or a little girl? You're in a lose-lose situation. You feel guilty regardless, right? I see in the chat Claire saying, yes, share your food or have a kiddies menu at my birthday. Exactly. Right, get the kiddies option. I see in the chat, I remember I authentically would ask for the cheapest meal at restaurants that my mother would take us to because I was so concerned about causing additional hardships. I think, yeah, a few people relating. I mean, share your stories in the chat. If you can relate to this kind of financial conditioning about going for the cheapest thing possible as your authentic choice, that's a huge money wound, a huge bit of financial shadow. See in the chat, I often felt like I didn't deserve much. It was confusing, yes, I felt like I was guilty. Now today I can't accept gifts or even someone taking me out on a date and paying. Well, you know what, I'm going to add on to that. In my personal story, to give you more of a context about my financial challenges, I had situations, because my birthday's in April. I'm an Aries boy. Back in the day, used to have these birthdays. An April birthday is close to a Christmas. It's only 4 months in between. My birthday is on the 100th day of the year. The threat that I lived under as a child, because I couldn't make any money of my own. If I wanted a new Pokemon video game, or if I wanted a new pair of shoes or something like this, the constant year-long threat that I lived under was, you better be good, otherwise you're not going to get that thing for your birthday, or you're not going to get it for Christmas. That was kind of the constant parental threat. You better be good, otherwise you don't get the reward. I understand where that comes from. That's old school parenting, and to some degree I agree with it. Children shouldn't necessarily be rewarded for bad behavior no matter what. There should be consequences for poor behavior. I agree. But the way to communicate that isn't consistent threat-based energy to raise a child who feels safe around, gift giving. I grew up in an atmosphere, I think as many people could relate in this chat, especially if you grew up in England or Europe or America in like the 1990s, maybe even 1980s kind of psychology, 1980s, 1990s, anyone who's in their 30s or 40s. I grew up in the 90s. That parental tactic of, you better be good because your birthday is around the corner or Christmas is around the corner, that was so interesting to grow up inside, because it wasn't just that. It was also what happened after Christmas or after a birthday. I'd be in a situation where, for example, let's imagine I'm given a Game Boy. Really fucking great Christmas. I'm given a Game Boy. This is my Game Boy. This is my Game Boy Color or something. I'm given a Game Boy Color for Christmas. 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old. What then happens is, in January, if I do anything slightly naughty or wrong, it's, remember, I can take that away from you at any moment. February, I can take that away from you at any moment. Careful, your birthday's coming up. I can take that away from you and you'll get nothing for your birthday. I lived in that for years and I didn't realize how fucked up it was until I left home when I was 18, that every single gift that I received as a child, whether it be a financial gift or a physical gift, at some point in the year, there was the ambiguous threat that it could be taken away at any moment. No gift is truly a gift. No restaurant meal is truly your authentic choice. I grew up in that psychology. It's unfortunate. To some degree, it's particular psychological traits of any parent, but also it's the culture that existed at the time. If you likewise can relate to growing up in these situations where things were never freely given. See, did I struggle with disorganized attachment? Yes, I did struggle with disorganized attachment. It was absurd, the home that I grew up in. I was writing about this back in December. I spent a week out in Vienna to start writing up my childhood history as part of the book that I'll publish in about a year and a half, 2 years' time. And I wrote out about the first 12 pages of my childhood history. And yeah, disorganized would be the light way of putting it. It was very chaotic. Financially, to focus in on the lifelong effects for me as an adult, the financial shadow that I have been encouraged to deal with as I left home at 18 and then became my own man, is to understand my relationship to money. Primarily is about creating consistency and creating a situation where, let's put it this way, to create a system where there's consistent positive experiences of money for both lifestyle safety, rent, bills, food, clothes, these kinds of things, but also some luxury spending moments as well. And to know, of course, that if I buy myself a Game Boy Color in 2025, I'm not going to then rob myself of the Game Boy Color. I get to keep the Game Boy. It's not going to get taken away from me. That's an inner child healing principle. You might think it's ridiculous if you're in your 30s or your 40s and you're thinking, well, of course, I'm an adult, I'm not going to rob myself of things. But one of the things to pay attention to is if you start talking to yourself, say you bought a new car, and you say, I can only use this when, or I don't deserve this, right? That ties into the energy around wounded inner child. Just look for the the gifting energy or the luxury energy and see if there's any conditions or strings attached. Let's expand out the conversation. I saw, I think, a pretty good question from Chris coming through that actually relates to my recent life situation. Chris is saying in the chat, another topic within the money psychology. What are your thoughts on putting time and energy into crypto and investing in stocks? The thought of investing in gold, stocks, and Bitcoin memes with massive resistance, but trading time for money seems like I'll always be swimming upstream. Well, Chris, I invest. I got into investing about a year ago. As things got better and better for the business, I had extra liquid capital inside the business, and I've been on an investing journey of myself. I have some Bitcoin, I have some ETF funds, and quite interestingly, this is a moment of real-time shadow work for Jordan. You're going to love this one, Chris, especially because you're in the shadow work library and you know my issues with screen addictions. When Trump came into power last Monday, I believe it was last Monday, not this Monday, the last Monday gone, but the Monday before Trump came into power, I had extra money from the business that I knew I wanted to put into a general investment account, and I wanted to set up my positions for the rest of the year. I've been learning more and more about stocks and shares over the last year. I've probably spent a couple hundred hours learning about retirement strategies and how to optimize tax systems, things that you have to do as your business gets better and better. You try and think about, okay, what are the legal ways to get the most money out of the business and be able to then grow it in a sensible way. I've learned these things, I enjoy these things. Something that's really interesting for me in terms of a financial shadow or a money shadow, if you start doing well for yourself, and you have a kind of history that I have, that's a challenge in itself. But let's just imagine that you have excess money, or you have excess possibility of what do you do with wealth that you could choose to invest. There's a few things to watch out for, and I've caught something in real time, which is kind of a personal share, kind of a vulnerable share. Trump came into power on, I believe it was Monday the 20th or something like this. Please let me know in the chat. Yeah, Monday the 20th on the calendar. Trump came in on Monday the 20th. On that day, I was offline, and I went out for a gym session and a restaurant meal with one of my very good male friends, and we had a great time together. We had a great workout together. I love this guy. Like, I've met him back at university. We've known each other for over a decade. Went to the gym, went to the restaurant in the evening. Time alone. Time to set up my general investment account, because I was at the stage in my business where my tax optimized accounts had already been settled, and now it's time to go into general investment, which has capital gains implications, and to pick individual stocks for the first time. I've been investing in ETFs, S&P 500 mainly, or in world funds, these kinds of things over on Vanguard. That's what I do personally. Super basic stock market investments. Back in the day, I used to do some crypto stuff. Like 2017, I fucked around with meme coins and day trading and lost money, so I don't recommend that, but lesson learned. For me personally, that's not my realm of financial expertise. Now having a business where I've got cash flow coming in through my client work and through my shadow work library course as my two main income streams, a bit of ad revenue. I'm not talking about politics, Eric. I'm not going to say anything about Trump, whether I'm pro-Trump or anti-Trump. I'm just talking about the economic situation of why I was investing on this particular day. I'm not interested either in talking much about whatever in regards to politics. We're talking about financial shadow. Let me continue my story. Extra money available. General investment account. On Monday night, after my friend had gone, I gave myself the reward of, this is my extra money to start picking some stocks for the very first time. And I picked about 12 different stocks based on different things that I think were going to happen over the next 4 years of Trump being in power. As America being one of the global leaders, I believe that if you're investing in a global ETF, a global fund, you're still investing in about 55 to 60% American companies. Even if it's a global economy, 55% to 60% is America. Don't quote me exactly on... Jay was responding to a comment above mine, not you. Oh, sorry, I misunderstood. I can't see the full chat. Yes, we're not talking about politics in any particular thing. Financial shadow, me investing in the global market, still investing in the American market. If I'm going to make good investing decisions, I better know what's going to happen in the American market, more or less, based on my understanding of history and psychology over the next 4 years. My personal assumption and presumption of what's going to happen is that I know enough about Cold War psychology to know where things are going to go in terms of rearmament and in terms of things like, big displays of power. When Trump came in, I thought, it's going to be Cold War psychology all over again. I understand history. I've got a history degree. I understand psychology. I've read so many books. It's Cold War psychology. What happened economically during the Cold War? Show of force. Part of the show of force is militaristic. It's also economic. Part of that is also something like the space race. And interestingly, not the whole financial strategy. I'm not a financial advisor. Don't take this as financial advice. But I thought, I'm going to put a couple £100 into a space-based company. One of the companies that does things in space, not the most obvious ones, some of like the small companies that do certain things in space. I put it in on the night, the next day it went up 25%. I'm like, interesting, because Trump then made an announcement about we're sending America to the moon. It's just psychology. Like a lot of investing is psychology, mass psychology, economic psychology, all these kinds of things. And for me, as someone who's interested in psychology, I enjoy playing in these spaces, but this is where it becomes shadowy. This is where it becomes very shadowy. This is where it goes into dark magician energy as well. What happened to me in that 1 week from Trump getting into power, Monday the 20th until last week, is that I was then checking my general investment account. I was opening it up, I was seeing how things had gone up and down, and I was compulsively opening my phone to see how my investments were doing, even though I opened these positions knowing I wouldn't really sell anything for at least 6 months, and many of the positions I'm doing 4-year time horizons. Still, I wanted to see greens and reds. I wanted to see number go up, number go down. I wanted to read all the news about what's going on with this company. Why is the stock market up? Why is the stock market going down? What are people on Reddit saying about the stock? This is a financial shadow in itself because it's financial compulsiveness. But also, for me personally, I then remember, you know what, I'm going to cut this off. So I sent another message to another one of my friends and I said, you know what, I'm going to delete the general investment account from my consciousness, and for the last 4 days I haven't even checked it. I've moved the app away from my phone, sent him a message at the end of last week saying I'm deleting it from my consciousness, deleted it. Yeah, it's gone. I'm not going to check it. I've got a date on my calendar towards the end of the tax year, and I will open it then intentionally in about 8 weeks' time. And if I want to make some disposals, I will talk with my accountant and I will make some disposals. But I'm not going to do any buying or selling until then. That's what I'm doing in terms of my financial shadow of overly involved. But this is where it comes to a moral point. As I wrap up this live stream, I've got a client call in 25 minutes. My relationship to money, if you stuck around all this way to the end and you want to know about my relationship to money on a spiritual level, as it were, I genuinely see it as my responsibility to manage the wealth that God has given me. It's my personal conviction. I am fortunate to receive increasing amounts of financial success as I put more and more work out into the world, in proportion to my economic activities. That's fine at the objective level. Spiritually speaking, I really draw a lot of power from the idea that if you're my client and you pay me thousands of pounds to work with you, it's my moral responsibility to look after your money in a way that you would be proud of me spending it. Next level thinking. And you might think that's so ridiculous. Come on, Jordan. Like, if I give you the money to work with me, like my mentorships is 4 months of very intense work. It's extremely intense. I only work with 20 people per year, usually less. That's £7,400. If you're in the Shadow Work Library, it's £6,600. Give you a hearty discount. You get the Shadow Work Library for free. It's not cheap. Kind of higher level coaching. I treat that money as sacred. I genuinely feel a sense of energy inside me, which is maybe my unresolved trauma. But if someone pays me money, or a client pays me money, or someone buys the Shadow Work Library for $675, when that money hits my account and I've paid all the taxes, I feel a genuine energetic responsibility to the individual that they have worked hard to make that money. They've given it to me in response to my service. That's all fine. That's dealt with. But I still feel the energetic responsibility to look after their wealth and grow it into something that will either grow more or fundamentally support me being the best version of myself to then help even more. I see it as a relationship with God. I see it as a relationship with any client or any student. But imagine what it would mean for you if every pound or every dollar that you earned, you truly saw it as sacred, how would you spend your wealth? Really though, like, to understand the financial and spiritual give and take in the exchange of services. When someone gives you money that they've spent a few months working for, when someone gives you money that they've been saving for a few years, and they think, you know what, someday in the future I'm going to work with a coach, and they give you a decent chunk of their savings, I feel the moral obligation to do them right by not fucking around with their money, not buying a sports car, not buying excessive amounts of clothing. I eat very good organic food, that's one of my major expenses. I make clever investments in time-tested strategies such as the S&P 500. And I also save a lot of money to then reinvest in terms of buying better gear for the channel. One of the major things I did in the early years is reinvest as much as I could back into the books. In the first year of coaching, I reinvested about 50% of my coaching revenue back into buying more books to do an even better job. I really like this personally. For me personally, you might think it's extreme. Maybe you think I'm being, incredibly self-righteous, but I genuinely feel that my relationship with money is that when clients pay me, I am so incredibly thankful that they chose to obviously invest in themselves with the coaching work, but in terms of the actual money that I receive, I really see the sanctity of that. And I would be embarrassed. I'd be embarrassed and I'd feel a healthy sense of shame if one of my clients saw that I'd spent £5,000. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what I'd spend on. Drinking, partying, going to a club, getting a table. I don't know. Buying a ridiculous car. It seems silly. It seems energetically incongruous and out of integrity. So I'm very happy to grow my pension pot or grow my investment portfolio. Very happy to spend a lot of money on food, very happy to spend a lot of money on books, very happy to buy new gear for the channel. But I won't waste your money if you give me money. I've received £23.31 in this live stream. That's going to go through after tax on my Google account. That's my reminder to myself. I've got my client session starting in 20 minutes. So a good place to start wrapping things together. We have reached one of the longest live streams ever. Yeah, buy a Tesla, who knows? I don't really care about cars too much. Sacred Economics by Charles Eisenstein is a great read on this topic. Perhaps, Chris. I read it myself, but wasn't necessarily the one for me. I see Kundalini King is saying, I just spent $400 on books. Thank you, Jordan. Let's wrap up the chat together. I see plenty of people coming in, and if I didn't get to read your comments, Claire was saying, my relationship to self-discipline is mind-blowing to a person like myself. Alex was saying, I've been burned with crypto a couple of times with that sort of obsessive mindset. Likewise, I deleted all access and just wiped it from my consciousness. I agree. Yeah, if you're an investor like myself, don't keep checking. I have a Vanguard account that I put money into the S&P 500 whenever I get the opportunity, dollar cost average into that, and just set it and forget it. I'm not a financial advisor. That is just my strategy. Cool, so some good chats in there. You know what I want to do? I wish that I could stay to get this live stream over to 3 hours time. But because I started a little bit later and I want to prioritize the time to be able to cool down my energy and give a good experience to my one-to-one client, we're gonna have a 2-hour session starting in just 19 minutes. I'm gonna honor that individual rather than selfishly pumping this video to 3 hours on a live stream. Because you know what? I don't matter. If I can egoic, I want to do a 3-hour live stream. I'll do that in the future. And take some time, go outside, take some breaths, review my client notes, get ready for that client session. I appreciate everyone being here in this live stream. If you're still hanging around and you've been watching for a while, just give me a wave in the chat and I will be back. I think I'm going to do another live stream on Sunday. I've been enjoying doing real-time conversation way more than doing regular YouTube videos because I get to go back to the roots of my channel, which is answering questions. I mean, this live stream, I don't know how many questions I answered, at least a dozen different questions. It's much more interesting than me holding up these books. Yeah, see so much love in the chat. Thank you, everyone. Essen, thank you. Les, thank you. Natalia, thank you. Gabriella, Klaas, Sylvia, Luce, Renee, Essen, V. Thomas, Jen, and Daxa. We have made it. Chris says, legend, holding the golden projections as per. Les says, what time on Sunday? Sunday, probably about afternoon time, I might go out and do a live stream. If it's good weather, I might go and do a walking in the woods live stream for a bit of fun. Or we start anywhere between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock, realistically. But I've got 2 calls on Sunday, so I mean, I need not spend too much of my energy. I've got 2 Sunday seminars. We've got the EU call and the America call inside the Shadowwork Library. There is now more opportunity than ever to get a live seminar time at the time that works for you. 7 o'clock UK time, 7 o'clock New York time. This first month inside the Shadowwork Library has been expansive. We are oversubscribed. More and more people are joining. More and more high quality conversation. This is a good time to get involved before eventually I raise the prices next month, and then probably the next month after that I'm gonna close admissions. Not a promise, but I'm aware that need to shut the door eventually, so that I can keep these small intimate sessions of 15 to 25 people, and you'll get an opportunity to talk in the seminar about your personal questions. The overall theme of the Shadowwork Library seminars is people submit a question, and then we spend 20-25 minutes talking about it, and not just me, but the other very smart people who can see things that I can't see. It's fantastic. But link in the description. I'm going to sign off, get ready for my next client session, and if you've enjoyed being here with me, remember, whatever that means to you, don't know what it means to me, just remember. I'll see you next time.